Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support the show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Salutations, everybody. It is Maddie here today, and welcome to a very special episode of Defining Duke, an Xbox retrospective, potentially. Who knows what will become? But this is episode 162, and we are naturally going to be diving into all of the reports and rumors surrounding the future of Xbox's platform. We only have one official comment from Phil Spencer. As always, I'm joined by my lovely, most loyal co-host, Lord Cognito, going down with the ship. How are you, sir?
Riding. The band's playing, the music's going. I'm still here, y'all. No, all good, all good. It's in around, back and around with the Dukes with the Sacred Boys. Haven't seen Chris in a minute, so this is good. I feel like we've missed signals for a little bit, and obviously Dustin and Cobra Commander's in the building, so it's gonna be fun. You know what I mean? But yeah, I'm excited, man. This should be a good show.
Absolutely. Yes. As Cog pointed out, we're joined by the Sacred Boys. What we wanted to do with this episode was originally it started off as like a standard crossover. And then we thought, well, make more sense as an episode of Defining Duke, given how relevant to Xbox it is, but that PlayStation is so heavily impacted by it. We would just make it a nice roundtable conversation about everything from the impact to the competition in the gaming space, the betrayal of fans. Is this the right decision for Xbox in the long term? What do Xbox games on other platforms look like? We have a ton of questions. We had over 300 write-ins. That was fun to sift through.
That's more than I think we've ever gotten for a show, by the way.
Yeah. And I really appreciate everyone writing in. They were all questions, comments, concerns. Like, there were very few jokes. A lot of people had a lot to say about this. So, we're honored by your participation in the show. And of course, if you're listening to this and you're interested in supporting us further, you can find us on patreon.com/laststandmedia. You can get early access to this show on Thursdays. You can get early access to Sacred Symbols and all the other great stuff that we do here. So please check it out. Before we get into all the write-ins and all the subtopics I prepared for us, I always like to do a little gut check, right? Just like initial thoughts and feelings, and then we'll peel it back layer by layer. So, Cog, I want to start with you. Right now we're seeing it went from Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves to now Gears, Starfield, Indiana Jones, rumors of Halo. The whole ship is moving over potentially. There's concerns about the future of Xbox as a platform. Are they out of the hardware race? Are the console wars over? What does this mean for competition? What does this mean for fans who have invested in Xbox even very recently? There's a lot of threads to pull out here. I know there's not one catch-all statement we can make, but for you, how are you feeling knowing what's happening right now with the Xbox platform?
Yeah, man, it's pretty surprising. Pretty surprising to see how things have escalated. And I think that obviously we've seen the rumblings and we've heard from very good trusted sources. And I think that's what the difference is in this case, is that normally, you hear rumors and speculation, but you don't get too crazy. But the sourcing here has been really strong, as well as the multitude of titles that we heard about. Initially, it was just, one or two, right? So you're like, okay, I could kind of understand that from a live service standpoint, or you could kind of understand something from an older standpoint. But as you started hearing more in core franchises, right? And I think as it went on and the silence from leadership and the brass became even more apparent. And I think that's when it really took off. And the community is definitely in the shambles right now. There's no mistake about it. People who have been loyal to this brand, feel very upset, very hurt by, the lack of communication and the clarity. And it's just confusion. Right now, there's a state of confusion. That's the best way I could describe it. I know we'll get into it deeper. Me personally, I'm pretty shocked by it. Some things make sense, but I'm the type of person I need to, one, obviously get an official statement, yes. But two, if this is the direction, you're going to have to explain to me why you're choosing to do this. And again, the last thing I'll say is I have two major thoughts, which is survival or greed. If it's survival and you construct that in a way that makes sense, I get it, But if it's anything other than that, and I think we'll be able to parse through that once we get more information or whatever this business meeting is, then we'll be able to make a determination. So that's where I'm at. I've been here before. I've been a Sega kid. It's no new thing to me. I've been a refugee. So, look, you go down with the ship on your favorite platform. Sometimes that's how it go. But if it's not, we just need clarity to help it make sense. But that's where I'm at right now.
Do you think there are people on the border coming over right now to the United States and their refugee status is Sega refugee?
It's a lot of us, man.
By the way, I just realized that I had the whole thing on the wrong time on the wrong screen. So I was looking this way the entire time. I'm sorry about that. Looks like I wasn't paying attention.
No, you're good. You're good. No, you're good. That's pretty much all I got.
Well, Colin, then let's hear from you, right? There's been a lot of Colin was right statements. There's been a lot of celebrations. We have write-ins dedicated to that. But of course, I want to get your feeling on this. I feel like out of all of us, you definitely were the most on the nose about how things would go. So I'm curious if is this a victory lap moment for you? How are you feeling in general about the prospect of all these Xbox games making their way to PlayStation and just the state of Xbox as a business?
Yeah, I mean, I was saying to my wife, and I think I said it to Dustin too privately, that I did nail a lot of what would happen, but it happened at a different timeline and probably for some different reasons than I thought it was going to happen. Like the example I used for her was like, I knew the world was going to end and I said it, but it was a volcano and not an asteroid that did it. It's like you could kind of see the end of it. So first of all, Maddie, the shirt you're wearing is the worst shirt I've ever seen in my life. I hate it.
Yeah, fuck you, Maddie.
The second thing I wanted to say was I've never seen a shirt worse than that in my life.
You got twice on me.
The back
I
order.
instead, what I got next to me, Colin, I got this. Hold on, let's see if I can shake it out here.
Is that Oilers?
No, this is farthest thing from the Oilers jersey.
Oh, is it the?
This is a Dragon Ball Z hockey jersey.
It's far stupider than the Oilers. Yes,
I can put this on if you want. I thought I'd spare
you. How
you.
you feel about that too? I thought you were going to pull out like a Bill Ranford jersey or something like that.
Oh my God.
How do I feel about this? I mean, I think this is a very complicated situation. And I want to, at some point, and I will maybe over time, is that I don't want to attack Xbox too much as I want to steelman their strategy. Because people that listen to Sacred have listened to since the beginning when it was just Chris and I will know that I was very bullish on Xbox late in the Xbox One generation and going in the Xbox Series generation with Game Pass and all those things. I'm like, to me, the strategy always made sense. If you're losing like consistently and you're seeing that it's not improving, you have to kind of change the rules of the game. And they tried, and I don't really blame them for trying, but I think that it clearly isn't working. And subscription models are stubborn things. They're mass sunk costs. And once you reach the plateau, or I'm not a plateau, but once you reach the arc at the top of the arc of cost and everything above that becomes profit. And that's why everyone dumps money into these things so that they just reach that line and get above it. And then it's just money made. And Microsoft has clearly never been above or anywhere near that line. And no matter what they keep saying about, I mean, this just proves out that things like Game Pass aren't working. I'm skeptical about some of the reporting personally. I think I shared with you guys The Verge. They said this. Quote, Microsoft, they said this yesterday for when we were recording. Quote, Microsoft is planning to share details about its plans to bring Hi-Fi Rush and other Xbox exclusives to PS5 and Nintendo Switch consoles, according to sources familiar with Microsoft's plans. And that these plans have apparently been pushed up. And so I believe Hi-Fi Rush is already leaked. I mean, there's an image of the protagonist standing like Cloud against a blue background. You know, it's happening. And I think Sea of Thieves is convincing enough where that's also happening. And then you see Starfield and Indie. I think clearly I was right about Blade not being identified because it's coming to PlayStation. I mean, I said that from the very beginning, that wasn't identified as an Xbox exclusive because it isn't an Xbox exclusive. So I believe these things, but I think what we're going to find when they speak is that it's not nearly as dire probably as it seems. I don't know if they're going to readjust Game Pass. I find it hard to believe that they would take day and date games off of Game Pass. I just feel like that would be the end of Game Pass. Why would you do that after having years? You train your audience a certain way. And I guess that's kind of the major thing is that this is the result of training an audience that doesn't buy games anymore. And I've said this over and over again. It's not an insult. You'd be stupid to have an Xbox and buy games on it. But it doesn't mean that the finances make any sense. They don't. And we'll get into all the other things too, but I'm also of the belief that I don't think Bethesda and Microsoft get along. I've said that for a long time. I don't think they're especially happy being first party. I think a lot of the games are going to be coming from there. I mean, when you look at a game like Starfield is being played by way fewer people than any Bethesda Game Studios game since probably Daggerfall or something. You know, like Fallout 4 shipped more copies in the first day, I'm pretty sure, than they announced player base on Starfield, you know, and that probably sucks for them at Bethesda. I can tell you from knowing people at many PlayStation studios, they're not really amped about being PlayStation exclusive at all. A lot of people are like, don't want to make games for one console. They want to make games for as many people as possible. And so I think it's going to be concentric circles around Microsoft, where the further away a publisher is held, like Activision, none of those games are being exclusive. Bethesda, I imagine that you're now in the realm of timed exclusive with Bethesda games. And then I think Xbox Game Studios, legacy games. But I don't think it's going to get any further than that. Are Halo and Gears coming to PlayStation? I would imagine so. Yeah. They might not say anything about that, but it doesn't mean the new Halo or the new Gears are going to come over. And let me finish with this, Maddie, and I want to ask you this.
Sure.
Could it be a brilliant gambit, and maybe the only risk left taking to make Game Pass work is to make the value proposition explicit over and over and over again to other audiences that will not come over? So this is what I mean. Starfield comes to PlayStation 5, $70. I buy it, right? I'm like, okay. Maybe there's some marketing saying like, you can buy it here for $70 or you can get it for Game Pass for $15. I'm like, nah, I'll buy it. 3 months later, I buy Indiana Jones, $70. Again, the marketing says, buy it over here or get it on Game Pass for $15. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to buy it. Then I get to whatever, you know, and then it's like, buy it for $70 or get it on Game Pass. At some point, I actually think that might work in getting people to move. But I think that's a gambit that's only played because the situation has materially changed. I also think they vastly overpaid for ABK. I think the situation changed for ABK in the 2 years it took to close the deal. And I just think there's a lot of people that are intransigent. Like I got this over, and I've said this before over the showcase stuff last year when I was like, there will be a second showcase, and that obviously changed, right? People can't compute for some reason in certain corners that things change. Like, and this is an example of things changing. So that's a lot. I don't know if that's a cogent answer, but that's where I feel how I feel right now.
We need to all get our thoughts and feelings out, right? Like this is a huge deal in the gaming space for me. To answer your question, this is something that Cog and I have proposed at one point or another, but I will totally say, like, I'm caught off guard by this. I expected a pivot at some point for sure. I think the writing has been on the wall with Xbox for a while that they're trying to transition out of just their box. When you saw them just go to PC day and date, PC Game Pass, and you see the Nintendo Switches in the background, like those are the moments I'm talking about where Cog and I were like looking at those things and saying like, okay, like a partnership's brewing. How is that leap going to look? And we always thought, I always thought that that leap would probably happen end of generation. You would see a vision through. You would, after you've amassed all this first party talent, you've purchased so many studios. All right, like we gave it a shake. Like this is what it turned out to be like. What's our next step? And at that end of the generation, then you pivot somewhere else. To do this sort of overnight pivot, mid-generation, it seems, and just run in a completely different direction. Like we mentioned on last week's show, when we were just looking at the layoffs, I said that this indicates that they saw something and are terrified and are running in a completely different direction now based on results that we saw. When you looked at the gaming revenue and content services and gaming revenue, they were up maybe 5-6% thanks to, I would say, just Starfield and Forza. But when you added ABK, and they went up like 50 points each, respectively. Hardware, with all of those in tow, went up 3%. So they're not moving hardware with all of those games. And their big blockbusters did well, but clearly they see the money in ABK, which was, all third party, right? And so I think with Satya Nadella at the top, we've seen various comments from him suggesting, he said at one point, Xbox and other consoles when it came to bringing games elsewhere, which says exactly what it's going to be. Tim Stewart's
How many
comments,
times do they have to be explicit about it before people hear it? Yeah.
Well, the problem is that you have like I covered it in my video. You had you had Tim Stewart first saying like Game Pass to any screens. Then you had Phil saying there are no plans for Game Pass on PlayStation or Switch. Then you had Satya saying Xbox and other consoles. There's clearly this internal schism ongoing at Xbox. It's being aired publicly where each new exec is trying to erase the last previous comments effectively. And now we're seeing that I think one side is won out. And like I said, I didn't expect any of that. And to answer your question, Colin, about that price proposition, it's like, yeah, that was kind of what the Dukes had thought would happen is like you try to, what I thought was, okay, you bring a Game Pass app to PlayStation or Switch, right? But what's changed now is the first thing we heard about that was like, oh no, Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves, they're going a la carte. There's been no rumor of, oh, Game Pass is going or a curated version of Game Pass with a specific collection and it'll be part of like Nintendo Switch Online or PS Plus. Like, no, it's like a game being sold there. It's not bringing people, quote, into the Xbox ecosystem. It's just making more money. And I think with that price proposition, you'll definitely, get more subscribers. I think that's what netted people into Game Pass in the first place. Do I spend 70 here or 15? And the more places you can create that thought process, yeah, you're going to drive more subscribers. But there's no denying that, like, I think I definitely was incorrect on my read of Xbox's finances. I think they're in a position where they're making money, but I think they want to make more money. And as Cog said, there's a difference here between survivability and greed. And I'm curious when we learn what Xbox says during their business update event next week, which direction it feels like they're going in. And I think there's a middle ground, frankly.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to say quickly that I think you asked, like, what did they see? I'm like, well, I think what they saw was ABK's ledger. Now, they've always had access to this, but understand, like, the price they paid for ABK, if everything stayed flat, means that it would take 35 years for them to recoup their investment and just break even. ABK was a vastly overpaid for entity. And I think they saw that, and that the layoffs were probably, frankly, should have happened under Activision, and they pushed them off so that Microsoft would have to do them so that they wouldn't have to deal with it. But nonetheless, I think they just unintentionally consolidated a third party. They consolidated a series of third parties that are making them indeed a third party publisher. Like, they can't figure it all out. And I'll get into it later. I just think they're the wrong company to even try to do it. Anyway, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Those are my starting thoughts. Dustin, I want to hear from you, of course. What is your initial gut feeling on just what's going on surrounding Xbox and PlayStation, the future of their platforms?
Yeah. So the main thing that I've been thinking about, and Maddie, you started to touch on it, is just I have this feeling of, I'm like, I wonder what the a singular war going on in Microsoft right now. You talk about Tim Stewart's comments, Phil Spencer's comments, the back and forth. And that's kind of the most interesting aspect of it to me, is just seeing that I feel like the tension, even though it's only through random statements, that I just imagine these last few weeks have been insane for them. And it's interesting you bring up the dramatic shift, the fact that this is happening mid-generation, right? And bringing up Colin's point about things changing, right? And I think ABK has a lot to do with this, where 2 years ago when this deal started, think about what's happened with the economy, what's happened with inflation. And I think this comes back to a lot of the fact that Xbox was always kind of an anomaly amongst Microsoft in that they were making hardware. Now, it's not that Microsoft has never made hardware, but since its origin, Microsoft has been a software company. And I remember when even when I was younger, when Xbox first came out, it's like, oh, Microsoft, they don't know how to make hardware. And clearly, Cogman, you remember, like, there was like, what are they doing? And since then, it's not in any indication of the quality of the hardware, because I think they've done an excellent job with Series X, and they've even dipped their toes in. There's like Microsoft Surface and stuff like that. But at its core, they've always been a company about software. And so I think that it is a thing now where they're looking at ROI and they're like, things have changed. And I think that where this war is happening is that, and Maddie, you and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, is that for the Xbox team, and I'm just speculating, I imagine this idea of like, we're almost there. We were getting all the pieces lined up, and that, Colin's talked about this idea of every quarter or even every month having a new release, if they can, or even close to it, right? Just constantly having content to feed the subscription machine. And I imagine Phil and Sarabon, that team there, are like, damn it, like we are so close. And at the same time, it's like, you think about a giant corporation like Microsoft, it's like, yeah, the vision is there and we were willing to wait, but things have changed materially in so many ways. So that's my high level thoughts. It's a crazy, crazy time. And I do wonder too, about the idea of like, what does it mean for the brand in general? Is this not going to be as crazy as we think? Is this kind of the little, I mean, there's been so many dominoes, it's hard to identify the little domino. You could argue Xbox One was the little domino, but is this the little domino that just completely deteriorates the Xbox brand, where eventually when they do get that ROI from third party and when it's time to make another console, they're kind of like, maybe not. Maybe Microsoft corporate is happy with the money they're making and not getting into the weeds with it. And that would suck. And that's something I think I would imagine all of us feel, is that if this does end game in a situation where there is no Xbox hardware, or eventually, I'm not saying this is the plan right now, but eventually the exclusives go away, complacent Sony fucking sucks. And it's kind of bad right now, not the worst it's ever been, but it will get a lot worse.
Yeah, I don't. Can I just add real quick? We can get into this more holistically later, but it's like, what competition? When has Xbox since the middle of the 360 era ever really challenged PlayStation? It's like the Jets. It's like the Jets in the middle of the 360 era. It totally turned around for PlayStation. Right. PlayStation 3 by 2011, it was over for Xbox 360 basically. I mean, or even earlier.
They were the zeitgeist, guys. We can't say they completely dominated them with the 360. I can't go there.
Yeah. I would argue it took. I would argue it took until like literally the Last of Us.
Yeah,
it was the Last of Us that did it, really. But
yeah, I don't. I guess I just don't. It's like Halo 3 and like all the early BioShock, Mass Effect, all that. BioShock on my shirt, but I don't know. It just feels like it's been even longer than just the Xbox One era that there hasn't really been. Sony PS3 ended up outselling 360 with a year less on the market. And I just say like, yeah, Sony needs competition, but it's not happening. Like and that to me is, so I don't know why people assume Microsoft has to be the competition, but anyway, I'm sorry. I have to know this is not my show anymore.
I think it's you're good. I think it's the fear of who fills that spot, right? We've talked a lot about Tencent here, Apple. The one thing you can say about Xbox being in that challenger role is they've had a stake in the game for 2 decades, right? Like they've been here long enough to know and respect gaming. And I don't think Apple filling that hole or jumping in, or Tencent saying, oh, we got a shit ton of money, like let's go make our own console, sounds appealing to me. And I think Xbox, while they maybe like during the one generation got smoked, I think their ideas have been there. And it felt like, I mean, we even saw it on paper with PlayStation's some sort of trepidation about what was coming up the pipeline for Xbox, where they felt threatened to some degree, at least this generation. But, I feel like I agree with Dustin in the sense that it was like, they were right there, right? They are right there. And to see, I think that's why there's so much hysteria online about it. But Chris, we haven't heard from you yet. So I want to get your thoughts, of course, top level on everything happening with the situation.
Oh, man. I mean, I don't know if I can say anything that hasn't been touched on in some way, shape or form already. But like, I mean, it really is the overnight nature of it and how sudden it feels. And like you said, the feeling of them being right there, like they're on the cusp of all these great titles potentially showing up out of nowhere, and just to see this kind of speculation and where there's smoke there's fire type hysteria about them potentially making changes that seem to signal the end of their participation in the console market. It's kind of scary. It's crazy to think that we're experiencing this, because I'm too young to remember.
Yeah,
like
same.
the Dreamcast. Like, I don't
Same.
really recall that at all.
April 2001
Yeah,
was when it was discontinued.
yeah. I had no idea. I had no inkling at all. I was paying so little attention to everything around me, but just to experience it in real time, like, this is kind of crazy, and or to potentially, like, I don't know. Again, this is all, we don't know what their plans are, but certainly they're planning on doing something that to a lot of people will make a lot of people question, why do I even need this? Why do I need this box? You know, if Halo, Gears, Forza, Sea of Thieves, if all these things go to PlayStation, why would I not just have a PlayStation at that point? And I think it's a reasonable response to have. And it's something that you wouldn't put in people's heads unless that was it was kind of what you're planning in some way. And so I'm very curious what we're going to hear at this meeting. But I do want to say, you know, as much as it would suck, like, almost objectively, to see Xbox leave the console market and just kind of leave Sony in this uniquely unchallenged position in, you know, the high fidelity console space, because Switch isn't really competing in the same grounds.
Sound like the FTC. I'm just joking.
You know, I mean, like Colin says, like, you know, Sony's been winning obviously for a while, but Xbox isn't anything to scoff at either. And so to see them, the idea of them potentially going away is very depressing, but it's also not necessarily Microsoft's responsibility to keep the gaming industry healthy. You know what I mean? It's not their responsibility is to make as much money as they can, because that's what a company does. And I'm sure they see, you know, when they get this Activision infusion and they see, like, what the fuck? Like, and then they think about Halo Infinite being played by 20 million players at launch just on their side, and then they see all this extra shit, and they're like, dude, we could have had like 50 million people on Halo Infinite when it was like incomplete and made like a fuck ton more money. What are we like? I understand that, you know, we're in this space because we want to make a console that people like, and that's obviously something that a lot of the team cares about. But, you know, when you spend, you know, how much money was the ABK deal? I forget. It was like 69
billion, I think.
Yeah, billion. Mm-hmm.
I remember because it was close to the sex number. It was like 68, 69 billion.
Should have just bumped it up.
Yeah, I know. $69 billion on ABK, and then that moves 3% hardware. You know, like, that's not good. You know, just objectively speaking, just on if you just look at the numbers, it's just not great. And I bet they're just in a position where it's like, well, we have all this capital, we have all this IP, we spent all this money on this thing, we're going to have to recoup this. And the quickest and most effective way would be to just be on everything. Even if that does mean Game Pass survives, you know what I mean? I don't think this is necessarily, Game Pass goes away. I think we're kind of seeing a position now where it's like, okay, well, yeah, you can get it on Game Pass or buy it for $70. We're leaving a lot of money on the table not doing that. And I think they see that, and I think they understand it. And I don't know, man. It's crazy. I almost don't even know what to say because it's so shocking and so it's so overnight, and there's almost no time to ruminate on. This is very fresh at the time that we're recording. This is like maybe like
It's
but I do want to wrap up a little bit by saying that Xbox One reveal is crazy to look at now.
Yeah,
because I really feel like that video is probably like that reveal is probably the most profoundly impactful reveal that has ever been done in the console space. I don't think you would see Xbox in this position had it not been for that horrendous reveal, and also the myriad of fuck ups. Not even that far after that, the Master Chief Collection being launched really fucked up.
Oh god,
the Halo 5 being kind of less than stellar, and that's their tentpole franchise at that time, especially. So I think you see all that at once, and you're just like, well, a lot of people see that in rapid succession. They're like, well, I'm not going over there.
Yeah,
you know,
I think it
really fucked them.
What disturbs me the most is how so much of this is self-inflicted, even beyond Xbox One.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I look at the handling of Halo Infinite. I think, what if that was just treated properly? I think of all these moments where the problem is now and I'm not trying to doom too hard, but with Phil not denying it, the reality is this. You cannot walk this back in my eyes. You have wavered to your commitment, even slightly, which there has been no fucking place that's happened with your competitors at all. And you've wavered now. So even if you come out and you put out this definitive statement, in my opinion, saying, we're here, we're not going anywhere, consoles, Xbox storefront, like we're here. Why the fuck should anyone believe you, man? You guys have been so back and forth for now 2 generations, almost shut down the Xbox One. You seem to be having a decent generation, almost shut down in the middle of it, it feels like. Why would anyone ever believe you? And the problem starts with what I was highlighting earlier. Their communication has been terrible. Terrible. And I am going to enjoy trying to watch them trying to spin whatever the fuck is going on in there into something that is good for gamers. Because the reality is, in my opinion, without Xbox, I think this space gets worse. I look at what's happening with PlayStation. I'm not a fan of their current direction. I look at Nintendo and the Disney-ified IP. Here's your nostalgia bait, Pokemon broken piece of shit for the millionth time. At least we have, with Xbox existing, some sort of challenge there of like, hey, what new thing can we do to have our splash? No one's thinking like that in those 2 other spaces, in my opinion, really at all. They got their Last of Us. They got their Mario. Xbox kind of fucked up their own in Halo. But at least we had a challenger in that was thinking in that manner. And the problem is now they have to try to do the thing that they're awful at, which is communicate to people how you're going to distinguish what will be exclusive, timed, or just going third party, and how that'll be categorized when, by the way, we still have no clue at all how they're handling legacy Bethesda exclusives. Let's say the next Doom comes around. We're under the assumption this will probably be third party. We still don't know because it's been this back and forth lip service.
That's going to be day and date the new Doom for sure is going to be on
I'm
PS5.
sure it is. Yeah. And but the problem is you don't know for certain. And that has been their problem. And now they're going to try to communicate in a response, by the way. They were planning this for the end of the month. They are hustling it now in a response defensively with all of those games in the umbrella and are going to try to give us a blanket statement that's going to cover up. They're not going to do it. I'm sorry. I don't feel
Matty,
at all confident.
How do you think they're going to do it? Do you think they'll do it with an Xbox wire post or a video, or what is the plan, you think? Or is it going to be a presentation or a PlayStation blog post?
I really thought about that a lot. And I'm thinking, do you do it on video? But if you do that, then I think of moments Phil Spencer's been clipped a million times over, right? Like the when he did the Bethesda roundtable, like, you know, if you're wondering what this deal is for, it's about getting exclusive games from where Game Pass exists or whatever. And like, that's just been used over and over and over. Do you put it in writing just so it's very matter of fact? You don't have to read tone or facial expressions. It's just what's there is there. But then is that too much hiding away? Because then you'll just put from the Xbox team at the end. So like no one takes accountability. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a blog post, but since they're calling it an event, it's anybody's guess if it's going to be a video, a stream. I don't know. I really don't. I'm predicting wire post. What about you, Cog?
No, I mean, yeah, I think this will be different. In terms of the verbiage that was used was kind of like was it like a business update or something to that
business
to that effect?
Update event,
right? So I do sense that. Let me add this. From what I hear in reference to all the information that came out, and you guys can take with this as you will. I'm just telling you what I've heard internally, is that there is truly an internal fight regarding this decision. And whether the warring factions and the CFO has won or the people who want to see the vision through, you know, are still fighting that is up in the air. But what seems to be consistent is someone is leaking all of this information. If this plan was to happen, it was supposed to happen in spring. So from what I'm understanding is that those on the side of not wanting this vision are feverishly leaking it to very important sources, thus forcing the hand. Because I think the thought process is that the people who are against it is that you are going to do irreparable damage to this brand if you do this. So again, I'm not predicting, but I do feel the longer this goes, as opposed to, like I said, Phil not coming out, no one making a statement. There was no Xbox Wire this week. We've got to wait a week all of a sudden. Just stand on it and say you in or you out. like why does this have to happen? And I understand from a PR standpoint, you have to construct a proper statement. You have to make sure. But what I am hearing internally, that this is still ongoing, and it may have been final, but as a result of all of this fever, hardware plans are out right now. I don't know if y'all know. Hardware plans are out. Yeah. The multi-SKU approach in 2026. One
handheld, right?
Handheld, one dockable, one power under the TV, 1/3 of potential business SKU. Like this is like people are putting this is high level leaking. Someone does not want this to happen at the highest level, and it will be interesting. Again, not predicting. If there is some form of walk back, not entirely, we do have the data mine stuff from Hi-Fi Rush. We know that is factual, right? But it will be interesting to see if there is a walk back, whether it be from Xbox Game Studios, what Colin alluded to, or, hey, ABK and ZeniMax. Just stay tuned. This is very strange. I will say the way this is being handled. That's the last thing I want to add to what you said.
Cog, I want to give you credit too, because you told me something very big before it was announced, where I think that shows that you are very well connected. For people that don't know, I won't say what it was, but you were right on the money. And so, yeah, it seems like that there's some sort of corporate civil war for sure. Yeah. It's fascinating stuff, but yeah.
Well,
a lot of directions.
I'm sorry. No, I was just saying the last thing to say, pay attention to who leaves.
That's what I was going to say. Is that I wanted to add it. I know this is later in the show, but is this thing where if they lose the war, does Phil walk?
He has to. I would assume he has to be. I would assume he has to be fired if they were to make that decision, because he's been wrong, right? Like,
it will be interesting. All I will say is that if they lose, that faction loses. Yeah, I could see. Look, I'm just going to put it out there. This is my guess. Phil, Sarah Bond, Matt Booty, I don't know, Greenberg or whatever, are probably team in favor of seeing the vision through, not going third party. Other schism, if I had to guess, Tim Stewart, Amy Hood. We've seen that's from the older documentation from the FTC. Yeah. When Colin, remember we talked about it, she was like, "Are you sure you're not building a moat around us with your cloud investments?" She's been very skeptical. I'm not, talking bad about it. I'm just what we have, the information that we have.
That was some of the most fascinating stuff that was said in those documents, I think, actually. Yeah.
Exactly. And we do know, again, being corporate cog here, when you bring up your OKRs, you bring up your rubrics, both teams have been working on these kind of strategies, or one team's been working on a strategy for years. If your vision is shut down and you are outvoted, it creates a completely negative climate in that building. You are not going to want to work there. If your vision now is shifted and now you have to capitulate to a vision that you don't believe in. That's how corporate works. So it's going to be interesting what happens with who leaves. But if I had to guess, just to answer your question in reference to Phil, I personally think that he's in favor of not doing this strategy, and it would be most likely, him just having to go along with the board, and then who knows what happens, to your question, Dustin, at that point. I could see a situation that maybe he doesn't last that much longer and he would leave.
I have it right in here. We'll narrow the focus here. We'll start picking at the subtopics, starting with Phil leaving Xbox. We had a right in here. We had two from Jordan Ray and Joseph LaRussa. I'll read them both. Jordan Ray writes, "Hey fellas, can't wait to hear the emergency Duke. Rather concerning news and speculation flying around. As a PC gamer primarily, I feel like I'm watching a coach throw in the towel for their fighter, Phil Spencer. Do we feel Phil remains, or will this be his undoing?" Meanwhile, Joseph writes, "Hey Dukes and Sacreds, if the reports are true, there's internal strife going on at Xbox with the strategy of exclusives or multi-platform. So my question is, what happens to Phil? If things go as we're hearing, he's on the losing side, arguing against the multi-plat approach. Does Phil leave? Does Nadella oust him? Curious for your thoughts. Thanks." And I think this is a reality fans should start to process. If it goes the direction it seems to be steamrolling towards, we've kind of seen the Phil Spencer vision laid out before us, which is like, he came in, he clearly gave some type of pitch to Nadella on why Xbox had to stay around, right? With the Xbox One generation, like, why are we doing this? Here's our future. Here's what we're going to do to make money, right? And so They go out, they nab up in 2 years' time, 7 different studios. You see Game Pass day one. Like, you see all that groundwork starting to get laid out with the goal of, I guess, quarterly exclusives fueling that subscription service. And right as they're about to get there, you see that they're pulling the plug on it. Like, let's be honest, last year was a pretty good test run of that. You had Hi-Fi Rush Q1. You had really with Minecraft Legends and Redfall Q2. You had Starfield Q3. You had Forza Q4. Like, that was a good test run of what it would be like, although it was still a little familiar with your Minecraft, your Forza. It was like, there wasn't a lot of new blood in there. So 2024 symbolized with games like Indiana Jones and Avowed, Hellblade 2, like this real strong push from Xbox. And that graduating class is what we've called it from 2018 and 19 showing out finally, which is what fans have really been waiting for above all else. And to see when you're finally there, like if you're Phil, and this was phase 1 of your plan, you're right there and this gets pulled, why wouldn't he go? I don't know if there's any logical explanation why he would want to stay outside of pure obligations contractually. And the second he can walk or is fired, I'm sure he would happily take it because that's not his vision anymore. That is not Xbox anymore, truthfully. What do they call it now? Is that why they removed Xbox from the Game Pass branding, which we talked about years ago, Cog, and just called it Game Pass because of the disassociation from the core brand? Is it just going to be like Game Pass and that's it? That I don't think was his vision. I think, as I've said, I think Game Pass was always supposed to be this alternative revenue source, not the revenue source. And I think that may be the change. But if this is the direction they go, I think he leaves. I do. I don't think this is the type of space he wants to be in, personally. I think he wanted to be a part of the puzzle, not the whole pie, though. But that's my read. Colin, what do you think? Is Phil in or out based on what we're seeing here?
Sacred listeners know that I've long been skeptical of why Phil Spencer still has a job now. And I know that Jaffe feels very strongly about that. I mean, we talk about it all the time. Matt Booty, like, I have no idea how this guy still has a job. It's crazy. And I say that because I feel like Microsoft has very poor feel for personnel on their gaming side. You let Pete Hines walk. Mikami leaves, right? You like all these guys are hemorrhaging. You lay off deeply into all of that Call of Duty teams with systemic knowledge lost at all those places. It just doesn't seem like they have the appropriate people in place to begin with. And I know that there are other people in positions of power in the industry that definitely know that. And I would imagine that some of their competitors even like it because they feel like they have kind of a captive. I would imagine that if they really are going to go multi-platform in some significant way, I think that they would fire these people. And I don't know why you wouldn't do that. Like I'm not trying to be, first of all, these people are all multi-millionaires that are going to be totally fine, filthy rich. And that's great. You should make lots of money when you're an executive and when you do this hard work. So I don't really feel bad it's like an athlete. Like I don't feel bad being flippant with your job. You make X amount of money and you didn't do well enough. And I was going to say this earlier, and I know that Maddie and Cog can both identify with this. It reminds me a little bit of like a turnover of a professional team where we have a new coach and we're going to run the 4-3 defense and all this. So your whole defensive staff, which is made for 3-4, can't even run it. Or where you want to do man and zone and all these different things. And it's like, you got to get the right staff to do this. So the guys that sold you kind of down the river on this Game Pass idea, which again, to steelman the idea, like I think it's a good idea considering where they were. I just don't think it pans out. And we were saying about things that changed. Phil insisted probably internally on this ABK deal. I'm sure there was pushback on it internally at the time. And now they own it. And I don't mean that like literally own it. Now they own it. Like they have to deal with this fucking thing. And I was saying about the numbers earlier, when you're making $2 billion in profit a year, which is nice, but as Activision was, you're kind of running close to the chest where you're maybe realizing, maybe we can't put Call of Duty on Game Pass. Maybe we can't. They canceled the Activision or the Blizzard game, right? That's why I was always so skeptical of people being like, oh man, they're going to get Activision and they're going to unleash fucking Hexen and all. And I'm like, dude, you're going to get Call of Duty forever. And
didn't Phil created that because he talked? Wasn't there some quote, Maddie and Cog, where he was like, "Oh yeah, we're looking at the back catalog."
yeah, I'm sure they are.
And
I'm
he
sure
was planting the seed.
He said he
And
wanted to check what all the teams are doing and what they want to do and passion driven. And
what they want to do. I mean, right. I'm sure it's maybe you see one or two of these things pop up in the back catalog, but to me, I just always looked at this as a Call of Duty play. And of course, the mobile play. Now, an important thing that I don't know very much about, so I don't want to speak too deeply about it, but it's important to this, is the king part of it, which is the spinning up an Xbox mobile store. And as I understand, there are new court rulings, maybe in Europe or something, that is going to make this incredibly difficult to do. On Apple stores specifically, and there are all these, and Epic is in on it, and everyone like suing each other over this. So that might also be a part of it, where they're like, we can't actually kind of do what we want to do with this whole piece of it. Call of Duty is very expensive to make. We have this huge, dude. Their first party now is it's unwieldy. The only other time we've seen an unwieldy group like this is Embracer, and it's not going very well over there. Yeah. So I just think, if they do change strategies, it's like a football team or a hockey team. You got to get a new coach. You got to get a new GM. You got to get a new quarterback. And they all need to kind of be on the same page. But I want to underline something. I don't think Xbox consoles are going anywhere. I don't think that Game Pass is going anywhere. And I don't think that it's probably as bad as people, in quotes, think it is. Like, I think that they might say, no, we'll approach it as the time comes, and then they will deal with those things, maybe Indie, Starfield, all that. But maybe it's a bit of column A and column B that allows Phil and his staff to stay. But more than Phil Spencer, I think Matt Booty's obviously in over his head and has been for a long time. And to see him kind of promoted almost was very strange to me. So
he's managing, I think, Bethesda and Xbox.
Yeah, it's comical. And meanwhile, I'm pretty sure Satya is only the third CEO in the history of the company, right? Of Microsoft. I'm pretty sure that's true. And it's something that's, because I think it was Gates, Ballmer, him. And he's been there for a really long time, and he knows, and it's ultimately going to fall with him. I think he's going to make the decision, and he's been pretty clear about where he stands, in my opinion.
Yeah, he hates exclusivity.
I'm sorry?
He hates exclusivity.
Right, like exactly. And that's what was said earlier, was Microsoft has always been an agnostic company. Going back to their Albuquerque days, they are a services company. It's not an insult to say that. They're a services and software company. They do it better than arguably anyone else. And I think that's why you see in Xbox, in the legacy of Xbox, the best stuff about Xbox were not the games. And I'm not saying as an insult. It was like, we've said this a million times, forced Ethernet cable, Xbox Live, the digital marketplace, like these achievements, like these are brilliant ideas that they came up with because they're services people. You know, like they understood it fundamentally. That's why I just think they're maybe even the wrong company to do Game Pass, because they don't have the creative energy to keep it, to do it right. It's almost like it could work. It's just maybe not the right people, not the right company. I don't know, but that's how I feel about their leadership. If we're in a situation where Jim Ryan is questionably being pushed out of Sony, and it seems like that there might be something to that, who knows? These guys days are numbered, I think, if this is the reality. And I would wonder who they would get, who's out there right now. What's his name? Mike Ibarra is out there now, and all these others. Like, you could, when they just dispatched a bunch of Activision people instead of absorbing them, I knew that they had no idea how to manage talent. And when you let someone like maybe one of the greatest marketers in the history of the industry, like Pete Hines, just leave your company and not do everything you can to keep them, I just think that there are problems behind the scenes that go up to these executives. But I want to ask this in turn, is like, how long are they going to blame Xbox One? Where does the buck stop?
I think to push back on that, I think that the Xbox One has done irreparable damage in a sense. They're still paying for it, because the problem was, even Phil had stated that was not the generation to lose. Everyone has now established their digital libraries and their footprint. And by them losing that generation, it's been catch up ever since. From a regime standpoint, how I look at it is, this brand was on the brink of elimination, not existing in the Xbox One era. When 2015, when Phil Spencer came in, it was a course correction from the day he started. Connect out of the box, all the things that the base and people who disliked the platform, it were removed. Now we get to where we are now. I think the biggest frustration is that for people who love the brand, it's been like, okay, you only had 3 to 5 studios at the time. I believe it was Rare, maybe like 2 other, I forgot what it was at the time, Chris, but it was very small, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, you don't control your IPs, Sunset Overdrive, Rise of the Roll, Quantum Break, you don't have any ownership. The vision is, let's get the studios in, you bring the studios in, you bring in, all of this top class talent. To your point, Colin, I do agree. They don't inherently have the game creator background. That's not them. They all have been served. They've innovated this entire industry for years. And all the points you said, I completely agree with in that respect. So I think the strategy was sound. Also, in Phil's defense, these are people who do not care about gaming. At the end of the day, gaming has now, with Xbox, has surpassed Windows underneath the Phil Spencer era. This is not a failure of an era to me, because he's been able to get to the seat of the table and make it to the board to make them look at gaming as something profitable. Now, where we are now is, something has changed. Whether it be the Xbox, the ABK deal going 2 years and being held up in litigation, whether it be the unsustainability of whether it be Game Pass or whether it be the current model, how it is, something changed. Because here's the thing, when financial people see the numbers, you're going to lose that argument. So there's going to be change. Now, the question is, how long is the pivot, or is this an experimental phase? That I don't know. But I will say, in terms of this brand, they would not be anywhere without Phil Spencer. I have to push back on it. Like this brand was, people talk about Terry Myerson and these names and Dan Matrick and these names. This brand would be extinct if it wasn't for Phil Spencer. So now where we go now is, to your point, if this thing continues to spiral, if the numbers do not continue to improve, there's going to be some changes, or someone's going to be fired, or he's going to leave. And I think the final thing for me is going to be, and this is, I'll push it back. I don't want to rant too much, but I think the thing is going to be for me, this is where I have questions. If you adopt this strategy, which is putting these games on PlayStation and Nintendo Switch, are you truly going to get the revenue you think you're going to get with games that are out of the zeitgeist? Because my thing when I looked at the Insomniac leaks, and you look at things like Miles Morales not being day and date, right? With that, those numbers were soft. Those numbers were soft to me. So to me, it does show that if you're not part of it at the beginning, you could suffer. And I'm very curious if PlayStation fans do support a Hi-Fi Rush, if they do play a Sea of Thieves at this stage. And that's where things can backfire. So I think part of the schism, whether it be Phil's side or whatever, is that you guys are making a mistake. Because to Chris' point, why I understand the numbers and you have to do something, but why invest in this brand if ultimately it's going to go somewhere else? That is a serious question. So that's all I got for that.
Let's shift to that actually, and then I'll kick it to Chris. The late Nate writes in, "Hey boys, my question is pretty simple. If this does come to pass and all Xbox exclusives end up on PlayStation, then what is the point of continuing to invest in the Xbox ecosystem from a consumer standpoint besides sunk costs like your digital game library? As much as I prefer the Xbox controller layout and think Quick Resume is the best feature either current gen console introduced, Xbox is now a hard sell even to someone like me who has already invested in the platform. Have a why are we still here? Just to suffer kind of day." And to kind of top that off here, there's another write-in here from Billy B. "Hey, gentlemen, there's been a lot of discussion online about Xbox players overreacting by being upset at what is seemingly coming. As someone who's jumped into the Xbox Series X strictly for indie and Starfield, I can't help but feel a little betrayed by Xbox if everything is as it seems. When I dump $500 into your ecosystem, I think the bare minimum I'm allowed to ask for is some perks like exclusive games. It kind of sucks that it seems I could have just stuck with my PS5 and put that $500 towards these games that seem to be coming over inevitably. Keep up the great work, boys." Thank you both for writing in. So, Chris, why buy an Xbox? And can you think of any good reason here why people shouldn't feel that their investment has been wasted in Xbox? And this is what I'm talking about. Not to steal your thunder here, but it's what I'm talking about when I say there are certain things that just already have damage done. You can't walk back that you have wavered. So go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, no, I man, oh God, so much. I think it really depends on why is it that you buy it. Like, I'm a very agnostic person. I'm in a pretty privileged position to be able to own everything and play wherever. So to me, like personally, I think the idea of Halo being on a PlayStation is awesome. Like I love that personally, but I also understand that, like, dude, I remember buying an Xbox One over a PS4 specifically for, yeah, you know, and I'm gonna play Halo on this thing. You know, this is the Halo box. I want it because I want to be able to play Halo, and that's almost the only reason I bought it. Outside of the fact that I had like a couple of digital games installed on the 360 or whatever, but like it really was the primary reason of just like, hey, this game is going to be here, even though all my friends are going to the PlayStation 4, you know. Even though that's happening, I'm like, you know what? That's great. I'm happy for them, but like this is the game that I want to play, so I'm going to make this decision. And so knowing that a lot of people make that decision, you know, a lot of people spend $500 specifically to play a game on specific hardware, to have it kind of ripped out from under you, that's like, oh, actually, you could have actually went to where all your friends are and not only gotten the games that you bought this machine for, but the games that you couldn't play on that machine as well. Like, you can get Halo, Gears of War, God of War, Uncharted, Last of Us, Sea of Thieves over there. And so I think that it's a valid... You know what? I do feel like the like interpersonally exclusives don't matter necessarily. Like, I do think it's better that more people get to play great games. I do think it matters on the consumer level when you're making a very, very expensive purchasing decision that kind of hinges on that. Like, really the only excuse that you have to invest in an ecosystem or invest in hardware that doesn't really have any exclusive benefits is feature set. You know, like, what does this machine do, like, inherently, that the other machine with access to everything doesn't do? And yeah, the Xbox One has, or the Xbox Series X has quick resume. It has, in my opinion, a far superior controller, but that's not really enough. You know, like, that's not enough. Yeah, really, when you're differentiating between two machines that basically have, you know, somewhat similar hardware specs, do basically the same thing, run the same things, that have access to the same apps. And it's why that leak of it's why that leak, I don't know how accurate it is, but like that leak of the multi-SKU kind of dock thing is interesting to me, because that kind of indicates a reason. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, if I can get a PS5 that I can then take with me, that's not uncompelling necessarily. It would be a fairly decent reason to be like, yeah, you know, like, they don't have exclusives necessarily, but I can take this PlayStation, or I can take this Xbox with me wherever I go. And that's fairly compelling. But even in that environment, like, I don't know, is that a market that's not already played to by Steam decks? You know, is there not already a case to be made there that Steam already gets all those games anyway? So I don't know, man. It is crazy. I totally get feeling betrayed. I get, especially if you've put a lot of money into the ecosystem, and now the question is like, well, will this even be honored? Like, how long will I have access to my digital library at this point if this does go belly up? And how will they handle that? How will they address that? That's a legit concern, especially if you've bought into the ecosystem recently because of all of the great things that you might have been seeing coming out. Like, you see that Xbox showcase, or you see Indiana Jones, or you see Hellblade and Avowed, and you're like, oh, hell yeah, dude. And then you spend $500 in a time where, by the way, like, I think I don't know how outdated the stat is, but like, I think it's like most Americans don't even have enough money for a $400 emergency or something. Like, that was like a stat from like a couple years ago. So like, that's no small amount of money. Yay! I got an Xbox, and oh, I don't. Oh. Oh. I could have got a PlayStation. I gotta make that sound. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, and you know, I think Colin is right to some extent. I actually don't necessarily think this will be as nuclear as a lot of people think it will be, assuming that it is kind of on this worst case scenario, because I think you might actually get into interesting territory where like, I don't know, man. What does an Xbox third party controller look like for PlayStation? Like, I don't know. It's interesting.
What's the first platinum you're going to get on an Xbox game, Chris?
Right? Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Look, the Master Chief Collection is really fucking hard to platinum. So,
yeah, I know. When I was playing through those games, I barely got any achievements, and I was just playing, on normal or whatever.
It's insane, the demand that game makes of you. But
it just makes me sick that I was asking for the platinum trophy equivalent from Xbox, and now they're fucking giving it to us the platinum trophy. I get that. You bastard. That's not what I want. That's what I want.
That's the monkey's paw.
Well,
Dustin, what do you make of Xbox throwing the towel? Maybe a little early for some fans. Why do they buy an Xbox? Is it a waste of an investment to you?
Yeah, I don't know who said it, but I've heard before this saying of like, you should never buy a console for what games it will have. You should only buy it for the games that are currently available. So I understand that aspect, but at the same time, I think this comes back to what we were saying earlier about this type of change. Maybe this was something when we briefly talked about this on Summon Sign yesterday, Maddie, this is the type of change that feels like it should happen at the change of a generation. I think you said yesterday, a clean slate, right? Yeah. So everyone's expectations of what you're offering are in check, right? So where this is particularly, I think, painful is for the people, like you mentioned, that maybe they really like what they're seeing and they did want to check out Starfield and a few other things. And they're like, okay, well, now the games are available and there's a promise of the future. And then, all of that changes. And I really feel for the digital library aspect in a lot of ways, because that, I don't know. I don't think we should get overly doom and gloom. I think we're like, I wouldn't say Xbox is going away fully, but at the same time, I'm like, little domino. Like, as analysts, we're here to see and try to project where things are going in the future. And if they see return on certain things and not on others, then I think there's absolutely, there should be a concern. It's like, man, I've invested a lot in this platform. And maybe that won't happen. But it comes to what Maddie said earlier. You've introduced the question. You've introduced the worry. And dude, gamers in particular, when it comes to libraries, literally the Epic Game Store is just clicking a different button on PC, and that's a step too far. And I get it. I get it. As a Steam user, I hate using Epic Game Store, but I do when I have to. But so I think that is one of the big things. It's the shaking of the confidence. Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Just to add on real quick, because I think you're on fire. That's in the sense that that's why the Xbox One generation was such the wrong generation for them to lose, because of that establishment, right? With people with those libraries and not wanting to move. Like they're there now. And the thing is, PlayStation and Nintendo have become synonymous with video games. I've talked to Peter more, during the Dreamcast series, him telling stories during the 360 era, as the struggles of being the challenger brand. When you're the challenger brand, you have to go above and beyond, whether it be acquisition, exclusives, all these things you got to do to try to bring people in. I think the fear of the strategy is that now you've done so much damage to the brand. What's the reason to be here? And, the last point I'll say, not to add on too much, was just that, to Colin's point, is reference to like, this may not be as bad as people are thinking, right? And there could be some truth to that. There's one thing that we talked about with them kind of seeing visions ahead. And if the court case with Apple, where now you can put, GeForce Now and Xbox, Game Pass or cloud streaming on an Apple device for the first time in Europe or whatever, if they see some data that says, 5-7 years from now, we see this ubiquitous future, right? We see where even PlayStation may put some, their live service games, on our platform and stuff. And they want to be ahead of it. In their mind, they're like, well, we are best equipped as the cloud services company to kind of do it. But the question, the counter is, are you too soon? And I think that also happened with Xbox One, because as much as Xbox One was a failure, we have to say this. We're pretty much all digital now. When people clown the Connect, oh, it's a spy box. Now we say, Alexa, do this. Alexa, do that, right? All the TV, what are you doing? Here comes The Last of Us. Here comes The Witcher. Here comes all these married and successful revenue-generating video game franchises based on movie and TV now. So a lot of times they are correct. The problem is sometimes they are too aggressive. And that's the fear. Are you too soon where you damage your brand? And now, guess what? Your competitor, here comes, okay, we'll do it. Because here's the thing. Me and you, Kyle, we both know when the PS4 and the Xbox One launched, PS4 had DRM in the box. They had a camera. Once they saw Xbox One go first that morning and they saw the reaction, so remove the camera, remove the DRM, slice the price. They laughed. I forgot who tells the story. Was it Layden or whoever tells the story? They were like, that was an alley-oop. And then from there, thus the generation was defined. So that's the fear here. Are you too damn soon?
Yeah. We have always been writing about that, actually. And then I think, Chris, you were about to talk. So
no, they've always been so just too early. They've always didn't they make like a tablet computer in the 90s?
Yeah,
or something.
Yeah.
Like it's like
we have Brennan Horton.
It's insane.
Who wrote in and said, "Hello, Last Stand crew. Xbox has often led the charge with bad business decisions that later turn out to be prophetic. If all that is rumored comes to pass, will we see a similar move from PlayStation, Nintendo, or even the likes of Valve, Epic, or Google in years' time?" And Chris, you were about to say something, so if you'd like to tee off with that.
Well, yeah, I think so. I think timing is everything, really. Like timing is a lot, almost more important than the idea itself. And I think Xbox has proven that. I think Microsoft is like I said, they came up with that tablet computer in like the early 2000s before most people even had reasonable laptops. And it's like, well, what is the function of this? Like, this is strange, but they were right. Just maybe a decade a little bit too soon. And the DRM thing with the original Xbox is also, or the original Xbox One is also an example of that. And I think this might be something too, where I do think at some point in the future we probably won't need boxes to run games on. You know, like I can't imagine a scenario where we don't get technology so good that our televisions can run that. You know what I mean? Our televisions are already running like Netflix and Hulu and stuff like that very poorly, I might add. But they're doing it. So, and I look at phones running Resident Evil 4, and I can't help but like be like, yeah, at some point this will happen, but it's a bit early, and it's also just, I don't know, it's just disappointing to see this happening again mid-generation. This pivot is just so jarring and so sudden. I don't know, man. It feels like a lot.
I feel like
new Xbox catchphrase: Xbox, I came early.
Yo,
I like that.
Yeah,
make the new logo the pause. I was just gonna say real quick. I think that the issue has been exacerbated as well because once again, I had to say that the press has shown their inability to connect with the common gamer and a level of privilege. I think I've seen a heinous amount of makes no difference to me. Yes, because you own both systems. I'm lucky to own both systems. Many of us are, or all three. But so many people are just hand waving it. And I think that's led to such extremes and doom and gloom because it's like, no, you're like the voice of the communities and you're just saying like, go for it. And that treatment is what I think Xbox fans talk about when they say like, if this is PlayStation, if this is Nintendo, would you really be like, all right, man, whatever. Like more people get to play more games. I don't think so. And I think it, again, makes the issue far more extreme because like the difference is to people saying, what's the difference? It's like, well, this is potentially the next Sega. This is people spending money that they were that on a promise that's being flipped overnight. You're watching Xbox like roll on their back in an arbitrary console war where they're doing fine for their own standards, but maybe not as well as PlayStation. The difference is trust broken. The difference is teasing for years from the likes of Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond and not getting that. Like that is the difference, is the lack of delivery of promise. And to see such hand waving over it is disappointing because we need to be more analytical as an industry because it's possible Xbox is ahead of the curve, but to be like, oh, well, people get more games. It's like right now we are captive in an era where exclusives do matter. They do. They define your brand. They define your box. They define your ecosystem, because right now you can't just piss away in today's economy $500 to be like, fuck it, I'll get another system, whatever. You can't. When you make that commitment, that is an unspoken rule that they must commit back and deliver, and you're going to buy their software, because they don't even make money on the hardware anymore. And so if, again, we're talking end of the generation flip, okay, like we're seeing more cloud hybrid from PlayStation, Nintendo is doing, because they don't have the hardware to run like high-end games. They're doing more streaming tech, and Xbox, the leader with Azure, then it's like there's a more collective understanding. Just like when the visions began to unify late Xbox One, PS4 gen, you started to see more and more digital, right? More preloading, that sort of stuff. Then there was that, oh, this is convenient. Like the gradual understanding. Gamers are the most stubborn consumers out there. The thing is, Xbox could be clairvoyant as shit. You cannot afford to flip overnight until it's time to wipe the slate clean. So, Colin, you were about to say something, but I just wanted to.
Yeah, no, I'm going to amend what I was going to say because it's a little more germane to what you're saying. Is you're talking about, because I agree with you generally speaking, like we have to be analytical, and I took an enormous amount of abuse from Xbox fans for being analytical. Like the reality from my perspective, and I'd be very interested to see what you think of this, is that I think one of the mistakes Xbox has made is, and makes Sony and especially Nintendo look much more brilliant in hindsight, is like they just don't say anything to anyone. They don't feed this, frankly, parasocial fanboyism that is deep in the Xbox ecosystem. I'm sorry. Like, it's not to say that there's not obnoxious. I hate so many people that cover PlayStation. They're fucking annoying. They're fanboys. They're obnoxious. But Shuhei Yoshida isn't gassing them up. No one's gassing them up from Gorilla. No one's talking to them from a Sobi or any of these places. And I think that the sad reality, and you see this, is like men acting like children, mostly men, women too, acting like children because they think they played Halo with Phil Spencer once. And so like Phil Spencer's his best friend, and Phil would never do this to him. And I'm not talking about anyone specific because I don't even know who exactly that is, but I know that that's the kind of discourse that's going on out there. And that shit is fed by executives that are playing on the fanboyism in their own ecosystem, and it's backfiring on them in a major way. Because if this was happening with PlayStation, we would be fucking melting down, of course, in our own ecosystem. But the one thing you couldn't do is point to all the different things everyone said to you and how you did this and you had brunch with this guy and you met this guy and this guy signed your console and all this. And I'm saying there's nothing wrong with that stuff, but you're feeding into that like they care about you and they don't. You know, like I was gonna say, like, I had personal relationships. I have personal relationships with many people in the industry now, but I had personal relationships with people at Sony when I was at IGN and Kind of Funny, to the point where I would go to dinner with them, where I would, when I went to Japan both times, I met Shuhei Yoshida at restaurants and had dinner with them, and all these different things. That's in the capacity of being a journalist and in the media. And I said this on Sacred Symbols recently, we're all using each other. And as long as you're in on that and you kind of fundamentally know this, now it doesn't mean you can't broach the friend layer, but generally speaking, they want you to speak positively about their products. They're going to give you access and try to tip the scale to make that happen. And when things go bad, you will defend them. And you have to kind of draw a line internally and understand it's like, they're not your friend. They don't know you. They don't care what you think, and they're manipulating you. And instead of you understanding the manipulation and using it to your advantage, you're letting yourself be manipulated into the point where you're selling your Xbox consoles and you're melting down on YouTube, videos and all these things about innuendo and rumor that we frankly don't even know about. And that's unique to this Xbox generation. And I really want to know what you guys think about this, about like what I see as like an overt toxicity per capita, way worse than anything going on in the other ecosystems. A lot of it fed by this idea that the corporation's behind you and the corporation cares about you. And yeah, I do my free marketing and I do my free reels and I make all this beautiful stuff and I promote the product. How can you betray me like this? And it's like, dude, you didn't even come into their minds for 1 iota of 1 second when they were making this decision. And you're being manipulated. And but the other thing I wanted to say that's totally, and I want to hear what you guys have to say about that. The other thing unassociated from that I was going to say, Maddie, just to get it in before it makes no more sense at all. What if Microsoft's marketing, you would need Don Draper to walk in with this marketing, right? You would need a high level of marketing to be able to make this happen. But how do you communicate to your audience that the way things are not working with Game Pass, but what if they funded Game Pass? You know, like in other words, yeah, we're going to send games to PlayStation, maybe half of our output or whatever. And we're going to take all of that money and we're going to dump it into licensing as many PlayStation as many games as possible for Game Pass. And we're going to dump all the money into Game Pass. It's kind of like the unspoken thing that happens in pharmaceuticals. American pharmaceutical companies make all of this medicine. We pay for it. And then it goes overseas and you pay nothing. And they're able to get away with that because they've already made their money. And they're kind of backfilling. And I wonder if there was a way to market this whole, if there was going to be a change, right? To say things are changing, but it's all about making Game Pass as sustainable as possible. And it's not going to be day and date. It's not even going to be after 6 months. A year or more, these games are going to come over. They're going to pay $70 for them. By the way, we have a special deal with PlayStation because they look at this as complete capitulation. So we're getting 90% maybe or something like that, or 85% of the money instead of 70. And we dump it back in. Could they do it? Could they thread the needle to make this seem like it's necessary and important and doesn't affect anyone to the point where people on both sides say, yeah, that sounds great. So PlayStation people are like, yeah, all right, we'll pay $70 for Indiana Jones after a year. And people on the other side say like, yeah, we'll have the cheap, seemingly unsustainable Game Pass that will actually be fed by outside money, making it sustainable. Could they do it? I don't know. But I think that that's a way out for them. So I wanted to say that. Two separate things, I guess. But
yeah, no, I guess I'll start with the fanboy note because I think Xbox definitely leaned into that a lot when their brand was at their lowest. You know, the Xbox Fan Fest, flying fans out to certain events and whatnot, because I think when you're at that low point, like you need morale, right? Like I'm not justifying, but they need to develop hardcore fans that kind of championed the brand. And I think that carried over into when the brand was stronger. I think the Series X and S generation has been stronger than the Xbox One, although the console sales don't really show that yet. I think generally with output and direction, things like smart delivery, Game Pass Day One being a new thing introduced for third party, like it does feel like this has been a better generation, but those old things that were necessary to survive kind of stuck and grew, and those interactions grew. And, you know, I see, like, for example, I think it was Sucker Punch with Ghost of Tsushima. Like, they got Suni Legend. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with, like, getting a big fan of your game or someone who has a particular talent to do some work for your brand. I don't think that's the worst thing in the world, but there's no denying that when I signed on Twitter, and look, we do this for a living, and I'm not disconnecting in the sense of like, well, it doesn't affect me. There were some seriously concerning messages and reactions online. Full on mental breakdowns, threatening of lives. This is why when I said a couple episodes ago, fanboyism is mental illness, it's not like I'm just doing it as an insult. It is.
Yeah.
You have seen for yourself how the attachment to a plastic box is some people's only point of personality, and it breaks them when they lose that. They lost Xbox in their mind and lost themselves with it. And I'm not celebrating. It was sad to see. I'm like, these are some potentially broken people. And I'm never going to celebrate that. It's really sad to see. But
well, that's my point, is that it is
was
sad.
Cultivated.
Right. They did this. That's their creation.
It is 100% cultivated. Yeah. That's why the betrayal feels so deep rooted, because there were relationships made. There were communications of some kind had. And you can tell by the coping in the sense of like, now I'm starting to see today as we record on Tuesday, there are some Xbox fans or YouTubers who are like, oh, wait, I heard like it's actually not that bad. And maybe it isn't that bad, but it's like the same people who are just freaking the fuck out 24 hours ago.
These people have no credibility. Like, first of all, I don't believe for every person I like that I trust in that space, like in the more, and you guys are kind of in the space too, so I obviously love and trust you. Here you are, but like Jez, where I'm like, Jez is connected, and I feel like he's grounded and well-meaning and all of that. There are 10 people where I'm like, no one talks to you. You have no sources. You bounce all over the place. When there's by the way, there's nothing wrong with having sources or no sources. The point is you're speaking like you do, and you're flipping out, and you're feeding this furor. That's why, dude, I thought it was hysterical when people were like, I'm selling my Xbox. It's like, you don't even know what's happening. What is going on here? Now, I understand, dude, being a fan of something. I was busting your balls about your Rangers shirt, but you're a Rangers fan, right? I'm a Jets fan. I'm an Islanders fan. I love these guys, but I'm not a fanboy of these things. The Jets make me miserable. Everyone that listens and watches the Jets, if you go to Gangrene Nation, which is like the big Jets fan site, go read the comments on that website.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And tell me if there are even any fanboys that exist for some of these brands. That's the way I feel like people need to treat gaming in some sense, is like not as a personal ego investment, but as something that is a piece of your consumerism or a fandom, but not to the point of fanboyism where you melt down like it's your nation or something. Yeah. Like it's like your family. People always say to me, it's like, how would you feel if PlayStation went away? It would be fucking awful. But like, I'm an analyst. I don't know that I'm that invested in it. Like, I don't really even care how the company does. In fact, I've said many times that Sony was I've been covering PlayStation for a long time. The most fun I ever had covering PlayStation really was when they were awful, because people were melting down and it was fun, but it wasn't fed by fucking Ken Kutaragi. Right. It was fed by like I've said before, we had a shirt at IGN that was like from a website where it said RIP PS3 2006 to 2006, and then it said something like United in Resistance with the Resistance logo. Like that's the kind of shit people were making like about the guy. It was hysterical, but it wasn't fed by the corporatism. It was fed by just fandom, and this is something else because of the access. Like it's a Frankenstein that has gotten away from Microsoft, and it makes Nintendo and Sony look so smart. It almost feels intentional, right? Like, well, post Iwata, post Reggie, post Shuhei, post Sean Layden, it seems almost intentional that they almost saw, like, look at this. This is kind of getting a little. We have to say much less. We can't have these people using this shit against us, and it seems very smart to me at this point. Because if these things happen with the other brands, it would be fed by a bunch of other fucking insanity and psychosis, but not from the people there, not from people thinking Phil Spencer is their best friend. Like there was no situation when I used to meet with Sean Layden and interview him that I thought, or when I had dinner with Sean Layden or something like that when I was a journalist, where it's like, Sean Layden and I are fucking boys. Sean Layden would never let me down.
I do have just extra 2 cents I want to throw in there because I want to kick at the cog, because I know we've had our encounters. Like, so for me, I think one of the big differences, like, I was definitely a Bethesda fanboy in like high school when I first started my YouTube career. Loved them, did no wrong, got the videos to prove it. Check them out. I definitely learned my lesson the hard way when Fallout 4 came out, and I was like, yeah, like, fuck, I really was like trigger happy, loved this game way too hard, wasn't critical enough. And that was kind of like my inflection point. What I will say is the positive coming out of this is I feel, and that's why I don't want to talk down to a lot of these like fanboys or whatever they want to call themselves, is this is a major inflection point as a community where the problem I have personally run into with the Xbox community, which has made me just not want to interact with them beyond this show, is I get like attacked or threatened because like I've been critical of the brand. Like there is this soft nature attached to, by the way, all these massive fanboys. So like if I attacked PlayStation, I put in quotes, they would come for me. Like there was this, but with this major point in gaming history, there has been this, I have seen the unification of like even the four gaming horsemen of the apocalypse, right? Like even they're like unifying, like, well, we can't let Xbox go anywhere because like PlayStation needs Xbox. Like there's been this unification, and for much of the Xbox side, there's been a degree of reflection of like maybe we got too carried away, and certainly I sympathize with that and I don't want to talk down too harshly because I have been there. Granted, I was not a middle-aged man.
Right.
I was in high school,
Right.
but
There's a
I
difference.
definitely had that moment where I was like, they don't give a fuck. They iced me after that shit. Like, they got my review out there. They're like, yeah, give the Fallout 4 fanboy his review. It's all positive. Thanks, dude. Peace. And I was like, what the fuck? Are you kidding? Oh, that's how it is then.
Right.
Okay.
You have to
and you learn the hard way.
Yeah, exactly.
I
And
learned young, though.
I learned that too as a journalist, where I was close to some PR people, and you realize, I've said before, I have to really reflect on this in a greater way, and like the things that I learned. Because the thing about IGN and just being a journalist was no one told us anything. Like, I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. You had to just learn. Most of us weren't even journalists. But it goes back to what you were saying, Maddie, about analysis, right? About being analysts. And that's why I don't want to gloat too much about having seen this, because it really was just an analysis of the finances, and I just wasn't delusional. I mean, it was literally that simple. And the sheer amount of abuse that I took for these stances over the last few years is extraordinary. And I wasn't wrong. I was right. So I hope that people don't become, gun shy over the reaction. At the same time, I do want to underline and outline and bold and circle. There are horrifyingly annoying PlayStation people. I just want to reiterate.
I want to make sure. I want to make sure it wasn't just one bit.
No, and I said it at the top too, but you just don't. They're in different. The fan bases are just in different positions. I also just feel like there are way fewer big PlayStation people. For some reason, there are a lot of Xbox people, and there are fewer PlayStation people. So we interact with it differently on our side too. But I want to underline and that too, is that there are obnoxious fanboys everywhere. I just see one company feeding their fanboys, and this is the kind of outcome you get. And so, the level of, because you're right, as a consumer, you have every right to be upset. I get it. But as a man, as a person, the meltdown shit is too deep. And I think, and I agree with you, Maddie, it's almost not to be laughed at, because it does indicate deeper lying problems that are manifesting in this unhealthy way. But then again, when the Jets lost the AFC Championship in 2010, I cried like a baby.
I think your emotional reaction is normal. I think you got stuff on your mind. I want to hear from you.
I got thoughts. Look, this is a good discussion. It's fair. I think that I can only speak from my experience, and what pains me is, obviously I'm friends with a lot of people who fall into this category, right? And it is a little alarming to see that level of meltdown. But I just want to help you guys understand the human element. I understand the part, and I've had discussion with Jaffe in reference to, look, they're a corporation. Their job is to sell stuff. No one's truly your friends. Now, I will push back. I have met legitimate friends in this industry. You know what I mean? I have met legitimate friends that I call friends, as a result, that are separate out of, okay, what's going on with Xbox and whatever, legitimate.
Yeah, you get over the wall and you become, right. I get it.
And there's a level, but to your point, Colin, there's a level of emotional maturity that, they're going to do some things I ain't going to like. You know what I mean? And obviously, like you said, the part of the game is also, for my brand and what I'm trying to do, we need access. We get it. But the thing that, I got to toot my horn a little bit, is that what I like about us is that, in the sense that it's they know if we say something and we're not finna, because we're going to push back. We're not just going to say, yay, everything you're doing is great. Yay, because you gave me access to blah, blah, blah. Right? No, if it's not it, it's not it. And me and Maddie, we've been through this, you know what I'm saying, with Redfall or whatever. It's not it. That's it. And if you're going to penalize me, then I am not the person for you then, right? That's part of the game. Now, to the second part, with the overreaction, to defend Xbox slightly, we have to be honest that Sony and Nintendo just don't talk to you, which is fine, which could be the better strategy, but they don't give you access and you don't know what they're doing. For me, one of my dreams as a content creator, I would buy the VHS tapes and watch the later recordings of E3. My dream was to go to E3. So I didn't know how to get there. I wasn't a content creator. I found out about FanFest, right? I jump on a plane, kid from the South Bronx, don't know anyone. They thought I was crazy. I flew out there to LA, not one soul. As soon as I get off the plane, we meet at this mall where, quote unquote, FanFest is going to happen. I'm introduced to all these people who are literally like-minded and love the brand. So the attachment, the emotional attachment is because they were doing something to get you close, to say, okay, you know what? Not only will, because one of my dreams was to actually be in the room of a press conference, the actual conference when things get announced, and to be in that crowd. That was something I always never thought would happen. So that was my venue to, and then you meet these people. Now, granted, you're going to see all the executives. They're going to shake your hand. They're going to say, yeah, you're part of us. You're one of us. Thank you for this support. And these are things I think is okay if you are the challenger brand. You've got to kiss babies. You've got to do, you're getting smoked by the competition. Your competition doesn't have to do anything because they're the champion, right? And to the flip side, and this is where Maddie will agree with me, I think when you are the champion and you have done everything correctly, and there is an air, like even the PlayStation Store, greatness awaits. There is an air. This is the VIP. This is PlayStation. This is us. You know what I'm saying, kind of thing. So I think it's just two different mentalities, and I think that a lot of people have attached themselves to that because of these relationships. But to your point, Colin, where you're absolutely correct, is you cannot let this define you. You cannot let this destroy your day and completely look, bro. I've been there. TurboGrafx, Neo Geo. You know what I'm saying? I've got a bunch of doorstops in my house. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day,
but doorstops on there.
The engaged.
Exactly. And for a lot of people, you have to put themselves like this is their first time going through this, right? And they don't understand. You know what I'm saying? So I get it. I look out like, man, that's a bit much. What y'all doing? You know what I'm saying? But I do remember when I was also that kid with the Genesis does Nintendo, and I was in that phase and all that. And then Dreamcast came, and it was the last round PlayStation got them out of here. I've been through it. So I try to have a little empathy, but to your point, yes, there is a bit of ridiculousness. I just try to understand why people get to that point. Well, hopefully they learn a lesson.
I think that's a great point too. Just quick, and I'll give it up. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to say that's an awesome point because I've been lucky enough as a game fan to really have only been fully invested in two companies that exist the entire time. It's not that I made unintentionally good choices, like good dice rolls. Yes. So you're absolutely right on that front. I do want to say that.
Yeah, it's like Maddie, the Mets and the Yankees, right? We know what we got ourselves into as a Mets fan. I'll finish it. Yeah. See, like Chris wanted to jump in.
Well, I don't know. I just think I think it's also worth noting that what we're talking about here is very, very specific to what I call, the online space. Like, I don't think most people who engage with PlayStation or Xbox are even remotely this. I don't want to say deranged out of respect, but like, I don't think they're invested in the same way and are hurt in the same way that you might see on Twitter. Like, I know Colin got like all sorts of abuse just for being right about certain Game Pass financials, but that's crazy people on Twitter. It's not.
That's true, but you're absolutely right, but it does suck.
It's all you see. It's all you see. Yeah. So it's really all that would matter.
And for some reason,
like,
I'm just like when PlayStation does something right or wrong. For some reason, it's about me with a lot of these people. Like one way or the other, I don't know what that's all about. So it's just being cut out of context and being told how fucking stupid I was and how much of a fanboy I was, and all I was doing was analyze. I had no connections. I was just like, this doesn't make sense, and I was right. So it is a little bit annoying to see that, but you're right. It is that's why I didn't want to do political shit anymore back in the day because it was mega abusive. It's just like, I don't know. So maybe you're right, Chris.
No, it is. Yeah. Oh God, don't even. Yeah. Political stuff is terrible. But I think, I don't know. I just think it's a shame that because I do think there is a way that you can love a brand and still remain like incredibly like even like I love Xbox. Like, I'm drift the fuck out in that shit. Like I have more experience personally with Xbox than Nintendo, honestly. Like the 360 might be probably my favorite machine that I've ever used, honestly. And the experiences I had there were like unparalleled, but it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like I don't even necessarily understand why. I mean, I guess you've done a good job of kind of outlining some of the reasons. Like there's a corporate kind of push to get into good graces of people and like have like, oh, you have these fan fests because you're on the back foot in such a uniquely profound way. especially after the Xbox One. I really don't think it can be overstated how bad. Like, I understand that this, like, when are we going to stop blaming the Xbox One? I get that sentiment because they've made several mistakes since then, but I don't think a single mistake that they've made since then would be nearly as much or would feel nearly as drastic if not for that. Like, that reveal was the Mel Gibson voicemail. Is the way that I look at it, where it's like, oh, what a good actor, and then the voicemail comes out, and then, like, he could make the best movie in the world after that, but, like, you're still kind of be like, oh, you said wild shit on that voicemail.
He did. Dagan and I talked about that on Knockback recently about Mel Gibson's redemption. But go on.
It's kind of how it is kind of how it feels, where it's like they just, you know, you did something that will never be. Dude, there are people who weren't even cognizant around that time. Like, they weren't even aware of, like, the industry at all, who are old enough to get involved in the ecosystem now, and they know about it. When I was a kid, I had no idea what the fuck.
That joint was a meme.
Right. But what I'm saying is, like, when I was a teenager, I understood that Sega used to make stuff and then they went away, but I had no concept of why or how. It meant nothing to me. Like, so when Sega came out and we were like, hey, we're putting Sonic on Nintendo, I was like, okay.
That was incredible. That was the craziest thing one of the craziest things that ever happened.
Bro,
dude,
facts.
that made no fucking difference to me at all.
Oh
because
my God,
I had no concept of, like, what even happened. But now it's like, because we're in this online era, it's like, dude, that video comes around every so often, and, like, even just it'll go on, it'll be on Twitter, it'll be a viral post on Twitter, and people who have never heard about it will be like, what's this? You know? And so that's a stain that will never be undone. And it's such a profoundly, like, it's the perfect storm of, like, everything wrong, like the wrong price, the wrong focus, the wrong reveal, the wrong inbox skew, the wrong direction, everything at once at a point where that was the most important thing not to do. They could have got away with it. Maybe the 360 or even a generation after the Xbox One, they probably could have fucked up and been okay. But at the establishment of that digital library, there's no going back. It really is. I feel for them in some way. Like, it really does have to suck to know that no matter what you do, you still left that voicemail. You know, like, dude, the Series X,
well
dude.
Well done.
I will say,
that
dude,
was so clever.
I gotta say, man, the Series X is a really good machine. Like, I like it a lot. It's way better than the Xbox One is, and it's suffering way worse than the Xbox One, and that's got to be so frustrating.
I agree. When I use the Xbox Series X downstairs, Micah is usually the one using it, but when I sign on a few times a year to play something like a Halo or whatever for Knockback, I'm like, this is a very clean, quick system. I do like the controller a lot, but what do you think? I mean, isn't what you're saying, Chris, doesn't that lend? It lends to why I think Game Pass was a good idea, at least fundamentally, like principally, because they were like, well, we can't rely on digital ownership anymore. Now we have to rely on subscription, like the exact opposite. But now they've compounded their problem in some way where people don't buy games as much on those platforms. As I noted, I thought they were so disingenuous during the ATK thing or ABK thing, where they were like, oh, look at all these exclusives. And it's like, dude, most of these exclusives are simply not ported by choice because people feel that it's not worth it. So they kind of bought all in on that, which is so interesting, you know, but it is a result of that. So I guess you're right. Like that the butterfly effect will never really stop being true in some sense.
You would not see Game Pass, I think, without that fumble of a reveal. Like because there would be no reason. Like you would still have the momentum of the 360, which was slower than, you know, going into PlayStation 4 for sure, because PS3 was on such a high note, but it was still nothing to scoff at. Like we talk about how, you know, there's no competition now between Xbox and PlayStation, and that's largely true. But like when you look back at the PS3 and Xbox 360, the PlayStation ended up winning, but it wasn't nearly as dire. Like they were genuinely like pretty neck and neck for a while, at least in comparison to where they are now. And so, you know, without that fumble of a reveal, without that haymaker of this is how you share games, kind of painting the picture, I just I think that's a nuke to your momentum in such a profoundly unique way that you probably will never see again. I don't think you will ever see a brand that is so entrenched in the industry like that, like the Xbox was at that time. The Xbox 360 had all this good fanfare. To be able to nuke, to be able to just absolutely eviscerate your momentum like that, you almost have to try. Like Don Matrick was, I it's crazy. And I wonder, I really wonder if we'll ever see that again. I really do think it's like that's a historically unique just fuck up that I don't know if Apple could ever do that. I don't know if PlayStation could ever do that. I don't know if Nintendo could ever do that. We thought Nintendo did that with the Wii U, and then it didn't.
Yeah, the Wii U was an incredible turnaround. I thought they were fucked at that point.
I thought they were finished too.
And there would be every reason to believe that because the Wii U is fucking terrible. Like, dude,
I remember when Greg brought it home before it came out, and he was reviewing Zombie U or whatever, and we were like passing around being like, are you kidding me with this thing? Like, are you like at that time being like, this thing sucks? And I really thought at that point, I was like, man, these guys are done. Not as a company, but maybe as a manufacturer of hardware. So that was an incredible turnaround.
Yeah. I was going to ask Dustin a quick question, not to interrupt you, Chris, in reference to, I forget if you're an Apple or a Android guy, but
Apple. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. See, that's what I remember. And like, what happens as a result of what Chris is saying is that now it establishes, because the competitor is now doing all the correct moves while you are massively fumbling the ball. And then you create a situation like, okay, this is an Apple house. This is a PlayStation house. You see what I'm saying? It's that brand recognition that they cannot get back. People are now entrenched and it's synonymous with it. When you think quality video games, you think PlayStation. You know what I'm saying? These are the after effects of it. And I just think it can't be understated how savagely important that was a generation for them not to lose, kind of thing. But I was just curious because I remember talking to you and you were like, yo, bro, like, I'm an Apple guy. Like, there's no Android charger here.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. That's what it establishes, those communities.
And it's a good point of comparison too, because literally all of Last Stand production outside of our shorts is done on my MacBook. And I use iPhones, I use iPads. I do have my gaming PC, of course, and I'm recording on PC right now. But as much as I like Apple products, they are an ugly company through and through. And I kind of despise them. I love their shit. Don't get me wrong. I love my MacBook. I love working on it. It's a pleasure to use. But when I think about the stranglehold that Apple has on not only its consumers, but the people that work with their products or make stuff on their products. And that's what I'm afraid of as things with Sony, I think. And we've talked about how, every company wants to be like Apple, of course, but Sony's move into having more premium options, trying to kind of move into this more like, the premium brand. And I think we're just kind of seeing glimpses of it now. But this is coming back to what I was talking about earlier about the lack of, a true competitor. And I think Colin is right in that the competition has been lopsided for a very long time. But I think specifically about PlayStation, the new tiers of PlayStation Plus. Jim Ryan, before that came out, said, Xbox Game Pass, we have an answer for that and we're working on it. I think that the reason we have that as an option for many people that are enjoying extra and premium, and is a great option for people that are more casually into the ecosystem, that exists because of Game Pass and because of Xbox. And I think that we can argue about or there can be many arguments for the positive or negatives of that kind of model, but for a lot of average consumers, that is a positive, and it would not exist if Microsoft wasn't pushing them in that way. And I just think about what other kind of things in the future that just, if Microsoft isn't pushing them, then what does that mean for us, for everybody?
I think it's a wonderful point, one that I never really truly considered, but I think it's a double-edged sword. Xbox Live Gold gave Sony cover to charge for PS Plus. They didn't have to.
Sure.
They didn't have to be like that. Might have never happened, or it would have happened way later. But they had an excuse. Like no one could go to them and be like, "You can't do that." So I do think it cuts both ways, in my opinion.
Sure. Well, that is true. But also, like when you weren't paying for PS Plus, it went down for a month, and it wasn't very. You know what I mean?
It wasn't very good.
It sure did.
That is kind of a you get what you pay for type of thing too, because like Xbox Live for the entirety of the time that I was a user of it was fucking kind of unreasonably good, especially on a console. So you're probably right though.
Well,
like,
no, I mean, Sony definitely had to make it better. So there's no doubt that it
right.
That's all true. That's the beauty of capitalism, is the constant pressure from other entities. And I think that's what Xbox has that's what I said. They've long excelled at this. If Xbox went away tomorrow, and it's not going to, but if it did, what they would be remembered for are those things. Those, in my opinion, very positive things. I think it's incredibly revolutionary that they were literally distributing discs in the late Xbox era with games that you could buy digitally. Like they were trying to figure it out before you could really load Xbox Live as an experience beginning in 2005. I remember going on Xbox Live for the first time in 2002. I used to play Rainbow Six 3 and other games on there all the time. And I was like, this is the future. This is nuts. I remember I was in college. I remember I used to host Xbox on my Xbox. I used to use it as a hosting machine to host. I had a T1 line in my this was in 2002, 2003. And so there was this nerd down the hall from me that figured out you can go into like the Xbox settings, just do this brief thing, and then you can use it like basically no problem. And I remember being like, this is incredible. Like this is it's shout out to all the things that they've done right. But I think we're not here today with them as a result of the things they've done right. They've done a lot wrong,
So back to one of our original talking points then, do you think that this could be an Xbox One clairvoyance moment then? Like, could this be a point where we come back in a couple of years if they go down this route and it's like, wow, that was a good call. Like, that's where we were headed. Because the reason I only get a mildly gun shy is I think about cloud gaming. I was not very bullish on cloud gaming. I was like, I remember when they first revealed that as Project X Cloud, they were playing Forza Horizon on your phone. And I was thinking, like, who wants to do this? Who cares? What is the point here? Now, I do most of my gaming in the cloud. I mean, it's pretty crazy. And I'm like super retro. So there's something there. And there is so much use of the cloud that there has now been queue times installed for like Starfield, Power World. Like we've seen queue times because so many people are playing through the cloud that you're seeing something there where it's like that vision, that bet was smart and it may pay off ahead of PlayStation, ahead of Nintendo, because Xbox is so wildly ahead on that type of stuff, that type of architecture, that type of cloud tech, that when it's time to start streaming games truly, they will be the most ready for it. And perhaps getting their games everywhere, I'm not trying to sound like I'm coping, but getting your games everywhere is that unfortunate Band-Aid you just got to tear off to get to that next step where it's like, I could see and understand the vision. I just worry about the brand damage. Not to recircle an old talking point, but I think it just goes back to that. It's like what you brought up is really good, Colin, because it's like, when was the last time? Probably with Game Pass when it was first introduced for me, at least. I was like, this is crazy. Like this is so smart. Like I love this idea. But it's been a while since we've had like that Xbox Live moment of, this is different. Like this is crazy. We're playing online against people around the world, right? And so, could this be that next step of, wow, I don't need a box. Like I just need an app, which as you look at my game collection behind me, not super thrilled, but like that is still something that could be a game changer. And again, it means that next step is being everywhere, including your competitors. It's just that you're a weaker brand striking first from that position of weakness, right? It would be different. What would the conversation be if PlayStation struck first and was like, yeah, we're thinking about going to Xbox, and Xbox followed that up. It's like, yeah, of course, right? Makes sense. So just food for thought. I wanted to actually talk a bit about the games because I know we've talked about the people, the business, and I think those are primary points of concern. But we had 2 write-ins here. One from Haven Breithaupt, who writes, "Sup chumps. Surely this news indicates the death of Game Pass subscriptions as a viable path for video games, right? This must mean the numbers aren't working for Game Pass and won't work in the future. Also, for Colin, does this change your stance about Game Pass coming to PlayStation? I never personally agreed with that stance, but PlayStation must know now that Microsoft knows these games need to be sold a la carte, so there's no need for any deals. This is the Thanos meme with an a la carte sales as Thanos. You couldn't live without your failures, so where did that bring you? Right back to me. And then Matthew Richards writes in, if this is all true, how do you think they would release the Gear series? 1 by 1 or perhaps an MC style package? Also curious if it'll all be at once or the slowest of drips. Now, I bring this in because that can apply to all games. Like, how do you bring these games out? What is the cadence, right? Because that is another important factor to consider is, again, my expectation with this personally was, oh, it'll happen just when it happens. Like, here's your Game Pass app, PlayStation. Here's your Game Pass app, Nintendo. We have a bundle of games for you, and we'll add to this over time. Just make sure this is live on your homepage. And they're like, okay, cool. You get your cut or whatever. Okay, cool. Sounds good. That's how I envisioned it. But now, as I said, they're kind of going reverse, like a la carte first, maybe Game Pass later. But Colin, since you were directly addressed to one of these questions, of course, how do you think, if at all, Game Pass exists on PlayStation? And how do you think these games get released?
Well, this is where I was saying earlier about how I was right in the main, but wrong in the weeds, right? In some ways, is that this is the way I thought it would happen, was on Game Pass. We know now from the ABK thing being such a font of information that we would have never otherwise gotten. We know that it's Sony that's stopping Game Pass from being on PlayStation. It's something that Microsoft wants. And they basically said, like, we would have it everywhere if we could. We can't. And this goes into what I was saying about trusting people and analyzing the details we all have about how many people have to say behind the scenes in major ways. This doesn't work, right? And I think actually Bobby Kotick on the stand was probably the most illuminating when they were asked, like, so why don't you put Call of Duty on Game Pass? And they're like, we can't do it. It doesn't make any money. It's like, why are you selling the company to them then? And that it just showed the conundrum that even like a lawyer in the moment in cross-examination or whatever understood. So anyone that would stop and look at the numbers would understand this as well. And so I think that maybe Sony, and I don't know about Nintendo, but Sony probably looks a little bit proudly at this level of capitulation in the sense that we held out, we were right, it doesn't work, and we don't need to now have this on our system at all, especially if they're willing to just sell a la carte games here. That doesn't affect us at all. We just get 30% of that. And Phil Spencer, going into all the quotes, talking too much, has that quote about how Sony takes 30% of all of the money we make on their platform and then uses it to foreclose us, basically. And now you're just doing it. But I think that this goes back into the virtual console argument, actually, back during the Wii era, and this comes up on Sacred sometimes, is there, and you guys might remember this, is that there was a lot of annoyance about how few games would go on virtual console and how it would be 2 or 3 games a week. But you have to understand that you have to kind of sustain this for a long time. So like dumping everything is kind of stupid. You want to kind of keep people entranced and looking, even if it takes like months for important games to come out. And Xbox obviously isn't going to have that many games coming to PlayStation, I don't think, but I believe that you would want to separate these things. I would believe that you would want to make an event out of it, which is why I'm very curious how they interact with the PlayStation blog and if these trailers go on PlayStation's YouTube channel. I mean, I said on Sacred, and this goes without saying, but we know that PlayStation knows this is happening. They've known this is happening because they have to lease and sell the development hardware to Microsoft. They know full well what everyone's doing. Like you have to apply and like do all these different things. So they've probably been sitting there wondering, oh, what are you going to do? Because of course Xbox or PlayStation has Xbox dev kits too, specifically at San Diego Studio. So it's not like it doesn't go both ways. But I think it's funny. Like in some sense, I wonder, the second Microsoft got a taste of a PlayStation game on their platform, they did the exact wrong thing, which was to put it on Game Pass. Now, I think it showed a lot of bad faith in some sense that I don't think is going to be returned now, in good faith with the shoe on the other foot. And I think you would think that Hi-Fi would be first and Sea of Thieves maybe a little bit later and Master Chief Collection and so on and so forth. But I just don't believe that there's going to be anything worth managing to this degree because I do not believe it's going to be day and date games. So anything that comes is just going to be late anyway. So this goes back into the whole idea of like, how do they manage it? I don't know, but I don't think there's going to be as many games to manage as people think. And I do think the day and date stuff will come not from an Xbox studio, but from an id Indie will come 6 months later, whatever the case might be. It's not that unusual. Like, we know Stalker's coming 3 months after it comes to Game Pass to PlayStation. So they're going to start to treat more things like that, I think. So I hope that makes sense, but that's what I think about it.
Cog, I want to hear from you, just because I know we've talked about this pretty extensively, really starting with those Nintendo rumors. Like, I always remember Sarah Bond doing that presentation and literally like on a set, mind you, not like her room or something like that, on a set, having the Nintendo Switch sitting right behind her. And there was just rumors continuously mounting that something was happening there. And so this feels like a major pivot. So is Game Pass still even viable on PlayStation if it's introduced? How is it introduced? How are the games released? Because I ask you this as well, because you definitely play more predominantly on Xbox than me. I play, I think, all over the place. But there is this growing kind of concern with, I think, the Xbox fan base, which I think is warranted, is are Xbox fans kind of just beta testers for like the full patched product to come out on other platforms, which is like, at least with PlayStation, I think the reason they get away from that narrative is they come so late that it's like, I may as well have bought a PlayStation after all the patches. Like, the game is done. They've moved on to the next thing, and then it's on PC. Whereas Xbox, like we're seeing with Indiana Jones, it may be as short as a couple months. They're still fucking working on that game, man. They're still patching it. And so it's like PlayStation gets that best version that Xbox fans, like if something's wrong, they got to sit through. So of course, with that wrinkle, what do you make of how these games are released? And, you know, is Game Pass even viable?
No, good point to add on to what you were saying in reference to that, release. We do know the rumors of a PS5 Pro, right? So the painful part for Xbox fans in the ecosystem that are waiting for something like Starfield is potentially the PS5 Pro could have be a 60 frames, which is kind of hilarious and ironic. But look, I'm with Colin on this in the sense that I feel like it will be, to your initial question with Game Pass, this throws a wrench in that. I think that ultimately that's what they wanted. But if they go through with this strategy, we have to call it what it is. This is capitulation. This is you, for whatever you saw internally, whatever does not work, and now you have to pivot. So, and people have made a decision. So if that is the case, I do envision it would probably be a very drip-free, not to your words, man, not a shotgun blast approach. It won't be like, okay, here's everything, this kind of thing. It will be, okay, we'll see Hi-Fi Rush, we'll see Sea of Thieves, see how that marinates, see how that goes, and then from there, a steady thing. Now, here's the real issue to me that they're going to have is that when you have ABK and you have ZeniMax, who ultimately are used to being multi-platform, right? There's a thought process that there is cries inside those buildings that also help facilitate this to say, hey, you given these directives as far as how much we have to sell, but we're also limited to the platforms we can go. Right. So that creates infighting. That creates, hey, and then you look at Xbox Game Studios, you look at a Ninja Theory, who I do think is worth the purchase.
All right, fair enough. Each their own.
No doubt. But you look at like a studio like, hey, like ZeniMax ABK is allowed to do, you know what I mean? Go everywhere. It creates this thing. And we even discussed it with PlayStation, right? When Bungie came on, right?
Sure, certainly.
Yeah, they can go wherever they want. Why do we? Because they all have these internal targets that they have to reach that are set from them, from maybe a Matt Booty or whatever. So that's the concern I have. And that, especially with Hi-Fi Rush, the way I look at it, Tango, a Japanese studio, being exclusive on Xbox, and this, I'm going to die on this. I'm probably going to kill for this take, but as much as a fan of the ecosystem I am, I thought the stealth drop was a cool thing, just cool. I don't think that necessarily was viable for the proper marketing of that game. And I think that helps self-sabotage that game. Because if you're Microsoft brass and you're wondering like, damn, we should have got more from that, let's add that to the collection. Either live service or things that you think didn't perform well and should have performed better. You cut that thing's legs off by doing that, because the majority of the gaming sphere is not in the Xbox ecosystem, is not watching a developer direct, right? And then you throw this thing out there with little to no marketing, and you're wondering why this thing is not selling massive, right? So that to me is, they are sometimes this self-inflicted kind of thing, right? This is positions they put themselves in. So yeah, to your point, I think the Game Pass thing is on hold. For right now, Sony doesn't want it. Nintendo is interesting. We'll see what happens with their new system. But as far as the way it's handled, I do think it will be this. They will word it to Colin's point. This is my guess. I think Colin's on it with this. I think they will word this messaging in order for you to sustain Game Pass day and date. This is what we got to do. And this is going to help fund those games for you. But for you, you're a VIP. You still get it in Game Pass, right? And then they get it maybe a year later with some of the Xbox Game Studios games. But ABK and ZeniMax and the rumors now that remember, we don't know that they're not stopping the acquisitions, but the rumors now is the next acquisition, fully multi-plat. There won't even be a question. And maybe that's the strategy they try to say in order for us to survive, in order for us to sustain this model, this is what we got to do. So that's just my thought of maybe how it goes.
Chris, let's hear from you on these various subjects.
I think, I don't know. I've always been of the mind that they were kind of, if they were already engaged in this strange kind of multi-platform system anyway, with like Minecraft and certain other things. Obviously that was a legacy game that existed before, but they have a history of like updating and making games for competitor platforms even a long time ago. So I think there is none of this necessarily surprises me. But I've always been of the mindset that they were kind of silly not to take advantage of the fact that there is an entire ecosystem outside of them that would be willing to pay full price for these games, while also still being able to lean on the idea of like, hey, look, we have it over here on Game Pass. Like, I've always thought that should have been the strategy from day one. It's like, yeah, you can put your games on PlayStation, like maybe a little bit later, a la carte, and just rake in as much money as you can from that. Sure, that gives PlayStation money as well, but I mean, you're making a shit ton of money probably, because they don't have the option of Game Pass. And maybe at a certain point they see like, oh, well, fuck, I'm buying a lot of these Xbox games. Maybe I just go buy an Xbox and get Game Pass and just get into that ecosystem. I don't know. I've always kind of been confused at the idea of Game Pass coming to PlayStation, because I just don't see, A, why Sony would do that, and B, why even they would want to do that. I feel like Game Pass really exists as a way to keep the Xbox ecosystem thriving, both on console and PC, but almost everywhere else where you can potentially stream or maybe download a game, like smart TVs now and things like that. But PlayStation, where they're very trained to buy, I just don't see why you wouldn't want to take advantage of that in some way, even if that does lead to, them keeping stuff off your console. Well, if you're going multi-platform anyway, it doesn't matter at that point. But as far as like these games coming to PlayStation, God, I've been asking for Gears for so long, and this is how I get it.
Using Gears collection.
Yeah, I mean, I've been waiting for that collection for a very, very long time. How they would do it, it would. I don't know, man. I can't say that I would be unhappy to see that, just because it means that that's a new injection of life into that IP. And I was kind of joking. I was fucking around on Twitter yesterday in all the mayhem. I tweeted like, "Oh man, Gears and Halo are coming to PlayStation. I wonder how they're gonna react to a good shooter."
Yes, you'd be a mess.
but I don't know. I think that'd be great. I think. I don't know if these are coming soon, or I'm of the mind that they're going to not be day and date outside of ABK, and I think Bethesda too. Honestly, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if, I think Doom is like a day and date kind of game. You know what I mean? Like that strikes me as one of those. But as far as everything else, it's anybody's guess. I'm really fucking curious about this meeting. I'm foaming at the mouth for this thing. It's almost annoying to me that we have to wait as long as we have to wait to see what they're going to say, because I'm so hungry for what the hell.
I still feel they will firm a lot of our concerns up, just because the rumors spiraled for weeks, and then there was no like,
yeah. They didn't outright deny it. So like the obvious indication is that there's truth to this, but I mean, like Colin said, I do think there's a pretty good chance that it's not necessarily as nuclear as people think it is, but this is all speculation on really well sourced rumors.
Dude, just think about this. Like a port of Master Chief Collection I was actually just thinking about this in the reverse, actually, because I was watching the MLB The Show trailer on Xbox, and I thought it was hysterical because it has like the Xbox stinger with the Xbox circle, and then immediately goes into a PlayStation Studios logo, right? And I was like, that's so funny and so strange. But imagine the boot up. You bring it up, and it shows like an Xbox logo, and it has a Game Pass logo. Doesn't say it's on Game Pass or anything. It just says it. And over again, you start these games up, and you see that. You start up Hi-Fi Rush, Xbox logo, Game Pass. Sea of Thieves, Xbox logo, Game Pass. And maybe that's what I was saying earlier is maybe this is a way to, I feel like this could be positioned in almost maybe is like everyone wins kind of situation. Yeah. Which is why I'm just, but I think we all agree that either they're really, and you said this, Maddie, they're horrible at communicating. So maybe it is that there's nothing here and they're waiting to say something next week, but that would be so stupid. So that's why I think there is obviously fire,
Something.
I have a different thought on this. Hear me out here. Just thinking about, we've long had the conversation on Sacred. I'm sure you guys have on Duke about Game Pass on PlayStation and what that would look like. Would it happen? And my stance was always currently no. The entire dynamic would need to change. And if it did, it would just be Xbox games. Now, we've been talking so much about the whole point of this would be to help fund the games leading back into the Game Pass ecosystem. And I don't know the answer. This is why I'm kind of just putting out there as a question, is that we've seen PlayStation open up their store to have subscription services. Namely right now, EA Play is one where they say, hey, it's not the same as EA Play on PC, where EA Play on PC, you get day one releases, you get Ultimate Edition, stuff like that. But you can sign up and you get, let's see here, unlimited access to a collection of EA's best titles, select new EA games, and a 10% discount on EA purchases and more. Is this an option down the road where once there is a collection of Xbox titles on PlayStation, that there is the mythical bespoke version of Game Pass that ends up on PlayStation? Now, where there is a little bit of traction is all this theorizing. We're saying it's like, okay, well, the advantage of them putting these games over here is the $70 rips each. And so you do lose some of that. But if it's like the EA service, it wouldn't be day one game still. So it'd be a very different Xbox Game Pass for PlayStation. But throwing that out there as a possibility, I could see not this year, not even next year, but eventually there is like, hey, we're doing an Xbox catalog on PlayStation version of Game Pass that if it's like EA Play for a year, man, this would be crazy. For a year, it's $30 for EA Play for that like legacy catalog. I wonder if that would be in the cards.
It's so interesting because what you're describing is like makes a lot of sense in that you would have to seed the games first. And then you could bundle them, which is not something I ever really considered, because it would be true that Game Pass would be a very unique item on PlayStation in that none of the games would be available if you weren't subscribed to it in that other way. But I also think that the fact that a la carte games are coming is a sign that they simply said no to Game Pass. I think that would have happened first. But that's a really good point. I think that's very cheap for Game Pass, though. $30. I think it would be, dude, if you wanted to be, again, this is how they can use it to market. It's like, okay, here's the bespoke version of Game Pass for $20. And it has some of the first and second party games. Here's the same version for $20 with all the third party games on our hardware. See you wherever you want to be.
But do you think the bespoke version of Game Pass, like, I don't know how EA Play works necessarily. Like, if you have EA Play on console, do you also have EA Play on PC? Is it, or no, are they separate things?
Totally.
That is an immediate, like, that bothers the hell out of me. Like it would almost make more sense to me to have, it's like, hey, listen, you could spend what a normal consumer spends on Game Pass, right? And then on PlayStation, like you have, this list of titles. But guess what? If you're paying for it on PlayStation and it's only got access to first party games, you have that on Xbox, and there's a lot more there. That might be, like, to me, that would be like a lot more compelling, where it's like, oh, I'm paying for this thing on the platform that I already own, and I'm getting less out of it, and I'm paying for it, but that's fine. So I'm getting what I want out of the platform that I'm on, but I have access to this subscription service, and there's this machine that is pumped way fuller with a bunch of other shit. Like that would be more enticing to me. I get that why that would be like a little bit confusing or why that might be a little bit more difficult to convey, but I don't know. The whole segmented SKUs of subscription services thing really fucking annoys me. Like I hate I don't like it on Hulu. I don't like it like the whole Hulu. It's like, oh, you can get it with ads, and it's like, no, I won't.
Do you want it with ESPN?
It's getting into the cable package thing where it's just like I'm good.
Totally.
The more complicated it gets, the more out I am. You know, and that's what I like about Game Pass Ultimate, where it's like, okay,
That's what I was just about to
I
say.
have it. You know what I mean? I don't have to think about like, ooh, well, this is a bespoke one, and this doesn't have access to this and that. It's like, no, it's just this, and it depends on the machine that I'm on, and I don't have to think a second about it.
Maddie, what do you think about this? Because this goes into what Chris was saying, which is, I'd be curious to know what you guys think of this. I wrote this on my notes. I want to make sure not to forget to say it. Is that and this goes into what we're saying about maybe a possible future for Xbox, like what I would describe as a passive stance, saying like, we exist, we're a piece of hardware, we have a subscription service, we have a la carte options. So think about it like Amazon Prime almost. Like where you sign into Amazon Prime, you could rent or buy almost any movie that's ever existed. And then here is your subscription of all the things that are included in it, which are also available a la carte. And you have options, and we kind of just take a more passive stance and let people come. I think that might be a way forward for them, is to just become more passive. They've long said that they aren't fighting the same fight anymore. And so I think that maybe this is the signal that we'll find, is that they're just going to become more passive, if you want to describe it like that. And I think that could work for them too, to just say like, come to us, here's the value, and we're going to make money on you wherever you are. And maybe the name Xbox doesn't really make a lot of sense for that. Maybe it becomes Microsoft Gaming or some other brand, but who knows?
Yeah, I think it's a really good thought, because what I find is one of the more under-discussed struggles for Xbox, particularly with Game Pass, is I think a lot of people focus on the price proposition, which we did a lot this show, and it's, I think, one of the biggest talking points. But I think the other is the game amount. We're enthusiasts. We play a lot more than your average gamer out there, I would say. And I look at Game Pass as this option that I think is not justifiable to people because they just don't play enough games. Like, people would rather spend $70, buy one game, and just sit with that for a little bit than $15-$20, whatever they increase it to a month. And you're just throwing money at, like, you're still playing the same amount of games, but you're paying more over time. And I feel like, especially with this influx of COVID games where, you look at last fall, it's ridiculous. This start to February, with Tekken and Yakuza and Grand Blue and Persona 3, like just a smorgasbord of
foam stars,
JRPGs, right? Foam stars. Yeah. Get your foam stars here. Right. I think the influx, the amount of games makes Game Pass at times unappealing. And I don't know if gaming is necessarily going to slow down, but I think that if you adopt that passive stance where it's like, we're just available wherever you want it, maybe that kind of circumvents that issue of volume, right? Because now the other thing I talked about for a while was this first party lineup that's been brewing for a while with Xbox. Like, I've said that's a shotgun blast. We got a little taste of that in fall 2021, right? You got Psychonauts 2, Age of Empires, Halo Infinite, Forza Horizon 5. And they were like 4 months in a row. It was crazy, right? And it was like, wow,
that was nuts.
This is what it's like. Wow.
Whoa, games.
And now you look at kind of what they're setting up this year, where about Microsoft Flight Simulator, Towerborn, 33 Immortals, about Hellblade, Avowed, Indiana Jones, Our History Untold. There's the possibility, as of this moment of time, of Call of Duty on Game Pass. There's so many games in their ecosystem that it's like, some people might look at it and go, I don't know if I can fucking keep up. So I wonder about that from time to time, if that's ever hurt them. It's not like a movie subscription service where, like, I watched a full season of The Boys this past weekend. I did it in just one go. That was great, right?
Yeah.
2 go, sorry. That was great, right? But with games, it's like, these are massive time commitments where when you're in that subscription service, you have to be playing a lot to get the value out. Where I think for some people, like, oh, is it indie for $70 or indie for $15? It's like, I'll just spend $70. I'm not going to fly through this thing.
Yeah.
And I guess that it goes to the reason I say all that is, it goes to Colin's point. If you're passive and you're kind of there and you're available, the Xbox wins either way, right? Now volume's not a concern. They've made their money off of you because they're just available on that platform, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
my concern kind of lies is, Colin, I want to just get your thoughts on this real quickly, not to pivot off this subject so we can circle back to it, but not a lot of developers really sounding off about this. I've seen a few indies chime in, about the worry of like, why are we making games for Xbox? If they adopt that more passive stance, like you and I are making games, like, do we want to keep making games for Xbox? Like, what is, if the platform exists, is it worth it if they're just kind of staying pat? There's also the description of, a potential free option with Game Pass with like ads in the game.
I think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think they have to have that option. They've definitely floated around the idea enough where it's like kind of one of those, like, we're going to fucking do it. Just, hey, like, how would you feel about this? And each time it's been a resounding, like, no, thanks. Like, don't interrupt the game. They're like, okay, what about now though? It's like, nope. They're just going to do it one of these days. No doubt about it. So Colin, is just like, as a developer, like, what do you think about what Xbox is communicating here?
I've long been concerned that Xbox is again, it's not, they've trained their audience to not buy as many games. We know that. So there's already a problem there where if you're not one of, and this is what a lot of people complain about, is that if you're not one of the chosen ones that gets in the Game Pass or gets included, which is cool. I mean, great games are shown in Game Pass all the time. I have no problem on the indie and small AA level. If you're not in there, then it's going to be hard for you to sell very much on the platform. And now they're making it seem like the platform itself is less important. This is the kind of ironic other side of the choice they've made, is they went in on a subscription service, so people are buying fewer games, so people are going to feel less attached to the console if they want to move on. If people buy fewer games on the console, then there are going to be fewer developers making games and putting them on the platform. They're going to start getting fewer and fewer returns, and then before you know it, they're going to move on. So, I mean, right now it still makes sense for us, but we don't make very much money on Xbox. We just do it because we want to have parity. We don't want to be, and this is what I was saying even about first parties, like, we don't want to be exclusive. I have no interest in being an exclusive PlayStation developer. We released Twin Breaker as a timed exclusive on PlayStation because it's a Sacred Symbols game. But other than that, we released it at the same time on all the platforms, and we'll continue to do that as long as it makes sense. But I do think that the walled garden problem is coming to pass. That's why you only hear good things about Game Pass from people who have been in Game Pass. There's no one really talking Game Pass up that doesn't participate because they're one of the chosen ones. And that's awesome, but what a lot of different people lose out as a result. And so right now we're standing pat, but things could change. I'll certainly, if I'm really surprised by next week's announcement, maybe we would make changes, but I just truly believe that they're not going to get out of hardware, that this doesn't signal even remotely the end of Xbox as an ecosystem or the Xbox exclusive game or anything like that. I just don't think that that's going to change. So I don't think we have to really change our outlook. I'm sure you probably feel the same, but I'll let you speak for yourself.
Yeah. No, it's one of those things where, because I was thinking, Cog brought up the Dreamcast earlier, and I was just thinking about like developers then, like we had like the PS2 and the GameCube as these like budding options, and then like the Dreamcast is there. It's like, well, why would I make games for this thing that's not doing that well, right? And so I was just wondering what your thoughts were. Like for me right now, so our game's being made on Unreal Engine 4, so like you have to, like, it's not, I think Unity has it where you can just kind of plug in the controller and go, and there's like compatibility there. But with Unreal, I know you have to like directly program that in. So like we've had to set up for PlayStation and Xbox and make sure it's just like the compatibility is there and that it works. And so like kind of good to go. Like we don't have console dev kits yet because like we don't have a publisher or anything at this moment in time. But it is one of those moments where it's like I'm standing pat in the sense of like, okay, let's see, like, what's your commitment here? Because if like you're out, then why do we bring the game to the platform? Like what, that's resources, and like we're a small team of 10. Like why would I spend the money, or if we get a publisher, their money on developing for the system that's on the way out? It would be like making a game for the Dreamcast that's sent out to die, which is like, one of those situations where, if you have the money to piss away, like these companies who are like, well, let's make a Stadia version of this game, like, which, we saw, like if you can go that wide, you probably have more money than I, but, as a small team, it's like, we got to just look realistically at the options here, where I'm not overreacting. Like, it's not like I'm changing anything, but I'm definitely monitoring it, thinking like, this will definitely determine a lot about like what I think many indie developers are going to do with the Xbox platform. And it's a shame because I covered a couple weeks ago, they just did a fantastic initiative in the ID at Xbox program that gets around any potential storefront issues, which Xbox out of the three has the least problems with, where they have to like this weekly spotlight of indie games like on the home board right there. and they cycle them out, and they're like handpicked by the ID at Xbox team. And it is granted like a more selective process, but it again puts a spotlight on indies in a way that I don't think, like, it reminds me of PlayStation, like that 2014 era with the Vita and everything. Like, they were just so good with indies, really put them in the spotlight. And so it'd be a shame to see like if Xbox was kind of backpedaling it anyway, because I think they have the best indie program. And as a developer, like, I'm super interested in what they're doing, especially because word of mouth has been, as you know, when we did DDU, every developer we brought on, who, you know, with Nobody Saves the World with Drinkbox Studios, spoke highly of it. Trying to remember the gentleman's name, Mike Rose of for No More Robots. Mm-hmm. Every game on Game Pass. So there's something there in the indie community. So I just hope that's not lost with all of this, because it is really good and it is really important. And I you know, that would be, I think, you know, when we look at game development right now, I think AAA stands pat, indies carve the way. AAA notices an idea working, they borrow it, and they make a bigger budget of that. And they're like, hey, thanks for the idea, chump. And so, you know, I worry when you lose, you know, because Xbox is really bad during like after the Xbox arcade days, summer arcade days, and 360. You know, Xbox One, they were not good. You know, they were not good when it came to indies, and I think it hurt. And so PlayStation thrived because of that. Nintendo has done really well because of the handheld factor. I think that's kind of led to a budding indie scene there. But I think Xbox has kind of taken the lead on that. So I'm getting long-winded here, but yeah, I just want to say that as a developer, those are kind of concerns I wanted to express, just because I think that indie scene, especially for Xbox, is super important. Like, some of the best stuff coming to Xbox is like indie and AA. Truly, it's not even the third party, or sorry, the AAA exclusives. It's indie and AA every time. That's most games we're talking about on the show, indie and AA. So
yeah, good point.
What else do we got here? We got a lot still that we could comb through. Let's talk about competition. We kind of touched on this really in our early thoughts, is what I put in my notes. I don't think we've peeled this layer back much. We'll start off with Sergio DeVivo, and then we'll get into a write-in followed up by Zeke the Plumber. Sergio writes, very simple question. Is this it? Is the console war over? Did Sony win? To which Zeke follows up saying, if Sony has won the war, are we sure it's a good thing that PlayStation no longer has a direct competitor? Now, I think Dustin had said it earlier that, like, I'm sure we all agree, like, this isn't good. But since you, I think, had that original thought, Dustin, I wanted to kick it to you as sort of like a Kickstarter for this competition. If Xbox is taking even a more passive role, like Colin had suggested, that does open the door a bit for a new player. I'm curious who you think they could be. Is there any worry of additional players coming in? Would they come in regardless the fact? So I just want to set up for you, and you take it whatever direction you want to go.
Yeah, I've thought about like who could see a potential vacancy. I think right now, I think an answer that comes to a lot of people's mind is Apple, particularly in that they have been trying to do gaming to various degrees, willing to shell out a lot of money, but they're always just kind of one-off instances. I think of like Death Stranding on iPhone and Resident Evil 4. We mentioned that earlier, and those are interesting, but I think the company that I would look at the most here is Valve, stepping in a more interesting way. And I think about sometimes what I do when big news stuff like this happens to process is that I'll talk to my wife Holly and explain to her all this stuff, like what's going on. And it's cool because she knows more about games than the average person because of me, but she has a very totally different mindset just because she's not reading all this bullshit on Twitter and stuff. So I'm like, what? She's like, well, who do you think would be? Well, she was like, I'm trying to figure out who would come up next. And what about Steam Deck? I feel like I'm hearing about Steam Deck all the time and stuff like that. And I was like, well, initially my response is like, no, Valve tried hardware in the Steam machine and failed badly. But things have drastically changed for Valve hardware when I think about Steam Deck. The reason the Steam machine failed was, I think, at its core, I mean, there's many reasons, but one of them was the fact that it ran on Linux and developers needed to port games to Linux in order for it to run. unless you wanted to go and buy a Windows key and install that and then somehow try to use Windows on your TV, which sounds like a nightmare. And I think about Valve and all the work that they've done since the Steam machine. Seeing, particularly Proton, which for those who don't know what that is, that's the translation layer. So Steam Deck runs on Linux, but they developed this software that can read the Windows code or whatever and make it just magically runs. And of course, it's not perfect 100% compatibility, but you see instances like earlier in this week where Persona 3 Reload comes out, doesn't run so well on Steam Deck because of some ray tracing feature that was just default on. And instead of waiting for Sega to fix it or put in the option, they updated the entire OS's firmware and fixed it.
Wow.
That's amazing. That's so cool. So I think about that now where I was like, Valve has the library of games. They have the ecosystem. They have a very dedicated audience. And now what they didn't have before was the ease of use. And they have hardware chops. I was like, that's kind of
sell me on that. This is a fucking wonderful pitch. Keep going.
I love the analysis. I love it.
He cooking.
It's a really interesting idea just because when like I said, when they started with Steam Machine, they didn't have the groundwork ready for a home console. And I think that it was a cool idea to work with different manufacturers to make different types of boxes, but it ultimately just confused the market where it's like, well, one of these is $400 and one is $1,200. Like what from a console perspective, it's like, that doesn't even make sense.
It's logical for them because it's like making a car. Like it's so expensive that they didn't think that they could do it. So it was like their half like licensing step, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So I see this where I'm like, man, maybe they're the ones. And one of the big complaints about console gaming is the locked down nature of the hardware. It's like, oh, you want to check out this like smaller project that just was released on this one website. Not going to happen. You want to use the power of your console to edit a video? No. You want to do this? No. And sure, a lot of console people aren't interested in any of that shit. And I think Valve knows that. And that's why when they designed the Steam Deck, it's like, no, it boots into that gaming mode. You have the option to go into desktop mode for those people like me who want to go around and fuck around and do all kinds of weird shit with it. So
the other layers are there, right? Like Steam Next Fest, Steam sales are a thing, right? Like things that define the platform beyond the hardware. Sorry, I didn't interrupt, but it's such a good idea.
Well, dude, their whole object system is revolutionary. Like the entire, like every game having a forum, every game having like dedicated help. It's incredible. I go on and on about it. I don't use Steam almost ever, but when I'm on there, I'm like, this is so good. It's so good. I just don't want to play games on PC, but you can totally get it. Yeah, so it's a great point, Dustin, that they could just not flip a switch, but they have the money now and the means to do it now.
Let's see. And here's another point too, is that you guys know I play all over the place, but over the years I've gathered 529 Steam games, which is not very many in comparison to a lot of people that are dedicated to the platform. You buy this box, anything you already have, you got it.
Yeah, the built-in library is a big deal.
It's insane.
Maybe you have this, and dude, just think about the synergy with Steam Deck too, which is something now that PlayStation and that Xbox thing, it sounds like they're trying to copy that.
I was just about to say that when you finish it. Yep, that's literally what I was about to say. It is profound. It is profound because not to interrupt too much, but
please.
Yeah, this is literally what they're seeing. They want to not give anybody a cut and try to get in on this business. But the advantage that Steam Deck has, they literally have both of their ecosystems on their platform, including their own. So they have PlayStation exclusives, they have Xbox games that are actually performing better. People are willing to pay for the Steam version than to buy the Game Pass version. People are willing to pay, like we talked about earlier, with the people don't even want to click another launcher on PC. They are so committed to the Steam brand. We talk about that brand recognition, right? We talked about that, this is something that people don't want to leave that ecosystem because the support, the features, that level of service, people really ingratiate. You were saying, Chris, with the cloud saying, it's a good point. Fantastic point, Dustin. I agree.
Yeah. The only counterpoint that I would have to it is if you have like easily the biggest thing that would sell a Steam console would be the fact that, oh, I've got my built-in library here. Like that's kind of a big deal. It's the reason why. I mean, we talked earlier about how the Xbox One, how they failed immediately when people were starting to build those digital libraries en masse, and how revolutionary it would be to have a console come out and be like, hey, yeah, you know that digital library you've had since 2008? It's here. And you can play it and it'll run at the best possible specs that this machine has. I guess the only issue that I think that I would bring up is the fact that, like, if I have a really, really robust Steam library, chances are I have no reason to have a console version of it, especially with like the way that they kind of jerry rig like desktop mode onto TVs and stuff. Like I've seen people have Steam on in their living rooms, kind of no problem. And to me, it's like that's a compelling thing for me, just because I'm super interested in new hardware and I could give a fuck if I need it. But I think too about, like, you brought up Apple, and I do agree that like that's kind of the default answer, and I think they're the default answer because they're currently selling a fucking $3,500 VR headset that people
even that useful
that is not that useful at all, and people can't get enough of it. That's kind of the thing where it's like, I feel like Apple has an inherent problem where they don't have a built-in library, but they have the finesse and the brand recognition to, I think, sell. Like, I feel like they're the company that can most easily sell a console with almost no fucking new features at all at a really high price, and most people would buy it because, like, oh my god, it integrates with my phone. Oh my god, it integrates with my stupid VR headset that further detaches me from the human experience. Oh, I can get my iPad involved. Like, I do think, I don't know. Like, I think Valve is in a good place. They're also uniquely rich in the way that they are, because they just earn consistent passive income from like the biggest PC store in the world. But their hardware is even with the Steam Deck, as much as I like it, it's still kind of inelegant. And I do think that if Apple were to ever show up, which concerns me because I think they've been trying. Yeah. They've been trying clearly. Like the idea that Resident Evil 4 is playable on iPhone is not some random. Like, I think that's an indication of the future in some way. Like, I don't think they would just do that for no fucking reason. That's such a weird thing for them to do without some semblance of a plan. I don't think that's necessarily in their, in their planning, but I don't see why you would build up all of this integrated tech and then not be like, hey.
Yeah, because Apple has a feature. Although I think it's like a picture, like you can pinch the screen and then like touch your laptop and it'll appear on there or something like that. And the idea that you could do that with, like, let's say you have a home console and you're playing Resident Evil 4 on it, and then you press a button and then you touch your phone and it fires up there and you just continue to play there. Like, that is shit that Apple and their built-in fan base will eat up.
Yeah. Or imagine just even something as simple as like airdropping your profile onto a friend's console, or like you know what I mean? Like there's a certain degree of there's a stranglehold that Apple has over like a large enough percentage of the population where like they could kind of enter a console market with no knowledge or no not no knowledge, but no previous experience and no backlog, and still make a shit ton of money that people will be happy and bending over backwards to pay. Just because it's Apple. And that I think is something that Valve might lack as Valve, not as Steam, but as Valve. Sure. And I don't know. I think those are the two main. Like, I don't think, because what is it? Amazon tried to get involved in making games, and even that didn't work.
And even and Lumberyard too, which was their engine, was a failure.
Yeah. So they can't even make a fucking engine. They're not making a console. So I think it's fair to say that Valve is a pretty compelling one, and I think Apple is probably most likely.
Apple has the Apple Arcade too.
So, the Apple Arcade. Oh, that's
which
true.
has been kind of mixed. Yeah, honestly. Well, it started really strong, and then
You got Shovel Knight dig on it, Colin.
Yeah, I know. That's not the one that's on console, right? Is there a different one that was on console? I played one of the Shovel Knight spinoff that came. I think it was Dig.
I don't know. I lost track of that series.
Oh no, that was Treasure Tracker. So I don't know what the hell it was. That's the fucking Toad game. I don't know what the hell's going on.
Treasure Tracker.
Here's two things I'll say about Apple. Just interesting observations about Apple, for my opinion. It's interesting that they did try to do a console in the 90s when they were at their absolute worst and they couldn't support it. It's called the Pippin. I know everyone here knows about it, but you guys can go read about it. It's really interesting. And so at their lowest, they had that idea, and it's interesting at their biggest that they haven't really committed. But as I've noted many times in the past, I've always been fascinated by Apple. Not as a user. I use iPhone and I have a watch, but I'm not really, I love Apple, but that's about as far as it goes for me. But Apple was pursuing a car at one point and felt like it was too complicated and too expensive and all of these sorts of things. And so they're always messing around with big ideas, and console gaming to me almost seems regressive for that company in some way. Like that's not like, first of all, if the Steve Jobs was alive, that would never happen. And it just seems like they want to figure out what's next to give you something that you don't know you don't need. And the other thing I'll say about Apple is that I don't think they're a good arbiter in the games industry. Like I think that they're not even slightly. They're mega responsible for a lot of the problems they are singularly responsible for a lot of the problems we have in the industry. And especially from the undercutting of game value, microtransactions, game passes and season passes, not game pass, but like passes for games and season passes and all this like incremental bullshit that ended up infiltrating core gaming inevitably. And that's their fault. So I don't.
But so Colin, with all that in mind, given the timeline that we're in, why would it not be them?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Why would it? Like, it would. If we're being real here, that just sells the point where it's like, oh yeah, it will be them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we have to deal with more things. It's like, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, Maddie.
I was going to say, do they enter the console space regardless then, or do you think this is without Xbox? They maybe pull the trigger and see like a whole.
I don't know that they would react based on what Xbox is doing, because I would assume.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I assume that they would have that's the whole thing though, is like I just don't know that they have much to gain in this space. Like
not yet.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like it's all a matter of like when they see something, and like
well, if the cloud gaming is going somewhere.
Yeah, the cloud gaming is a big deal. I think also, we laughed a little bit about the the Vision Pro or whatever, but that is undoubtedly cool tech that is going to get way cooler, way more useful, way smaller, way more accessible. And so what happens when you have a VR headset that functions as a dual workspace that integrates with your phone and your iPad and your home computer, but you can't plug it into your PlayStation or something to play PSVR or something, or there's a need there where it's like, oh, interesting, I can move from my PC to my VR to or I can move from my MacBook to my VR to my now Apple console or whatever. It might not even be a console. Maybe it's just almost like how those Mac computers are, where they're just like the
Mac Mini.
Yeah. It's almost like
it's
like a paperweight. It's almost the most unassuming thing in the world. I don't know. I could see them at a certain point seeing enough value when their synergy is already so high now in VR. Like, I don't know. They're venturing into spaces that I think are adjacent enough to gaming where, like, I wouldn't surprise me necessarily if at some point in the future, maybe not near future, by the way, this could be easily like beyond 10 years from now. But I think they'd be foolish to not address the fact that, like, oh, dude, we have a lot of synergy going on, and there's like this one aspect of the entire home environment that we're just not a part of. Why are we not a part of it when we're dominating everything else? They
have the money necessary to do it, because that's the thing that I think Google underestimated in some sense, was how expensive it was going to be to try to make it work, because you have to pay a premium to get games or you're not going to get anything. So I think Apple could, and it's true. I was actually reading, I don't invest in Apple, but I was reading their financials recently, and I saw that iPad specifically is like cratering, and they probably have to. Not have to, and I'm sure it's urgent for them to find new revenue streams. And
yeah,
that might be the case. And dude, I root for Apple's gaming division just because there's so many ex-IGN people there that I used to work with. That's a lot of them. One of the leaders is Matt Casamassina, who used to run IGN Nintendo, who's the guy who played Halo on Nintendo DS in that video, famous video. And so I'm always rooting for them, but I don't know that I like their energy in gaming. I feel like the correlation between Apple and gaming is actually already PlayStation, and I've made that comparison that like PlayStation fills that space. That's the frustrating thing about competing with them probably, is that I don't give a shit what you do. I'm just going to buy a PlayStation. Like it literally does. And that's the way I feel about my phone. I could give a fuck what's happening with Android phones. Like people tell me all the time, oh, you can sideload this and do this. And then I'm like, dude, I don't give a shit. I'm going to buy an iPhone until the day I die. You know,
you don't want a Galaxy Note that explodes on the plane.
And PlayStation, I think, is in that space. Like, I think that they've kind of earned that in some sense, but it's like, I just don't think it's true, man. There are almost no exclusive games, especially from first party, like coming out of any consequence, and it doesn't matter. Like, and I think Sony is kind of finally it's like the guy pushing the rock up the hill, but they actually got it over, and now it's like going down the hill. Like, I think that they're in that position, and that's probably mega frustrating, which is probably really corruptive to the data that Microsoft could gather about anything they do, because you're dealing with an irrational set of competitors. And that, again, it goes into the fact that, like, I almost think that no one will get in because it's
tough. It's tough to crack.
That's kind of my assumption, is that like it'll kind of remain. It'll just be PlayStation at that point if Xbox does go away, and Nintendo, I guess, but they're not even really competing on the same level for the same audiences really anyway. And so I do think that's ultimately what it will be, but I don't know, man. Like I in the hypothetical of Apple coming into the console space and then, you know, competing with PlayStation, do you think that PlayStation maintains that air of high quality, or does it then seem in comparison like a janky fucking mess?
Probably. They're not doing themselves any favor with that redesign. You know, that like stands up on a fucking plastic pin that you paid $30 for.
Yes. Yeah, dude. You got to know that whatever that Apple machine would be, hypothetically, it's going to look fucking gorgeous.
Hell yeah.
Or at least like really fucking deeply unassuming. I don't know. It's an interesting thing to pontificate on, because that VR headset, as much as I clown on it, it's like that. I want that.
I've seen some use cases where I'm like, this is dope. I saw a guy on a plane using it, and I'm like, this is kind of fucking weird, but he's like typing and doing, I'm like, what the fuck? It's like he's like playing make believe or something, you know? Like,
it is definitely one of those situations where, like, I think it looks ridiculous now, but it's the same thing. Like, it used to look ridiculous when people would wear AirPods, and now I don't think twice about it.
Right.
We're heading into this really strange place, but that's, I don't know.
I can't wait to see the first person get robbed in one of my fight videos of their $3,500 headset, because there's some people in low trust cities walking around with these things where I'm like,
low trust.
Yeah, like where you gotta, if you're walking down Market Street in San Francisco with that thing, like, good luck. You know, I think people have to be a little more self-aware. They're going to get popped. I'm telling you, in the coming weeks, there's going to be security camera footage or something funny where someone's going to get this shit stolen straight off their head. So
there's already some videos of a guy walking out of a Cybertruck with it, and he's doing all this dumb shit.
And then there's the videos I saw too of like a Cybertruck driving down the street, and the guy's not driving it, and he's also on his headset. Yeah. It's like, dude,
that guy overpaid to die.
Right.
Yo. Right. That guy was not long for this earth if he's doing that. That's crazy. The amount of trust that you have to have, not only in that headset to not run out of battery at like the worst possible time, but also just your self-driving Tesla. Nah, dude.
That's what that video.
You're out of your mind.
Let's see here. I think that we've pulled back the layer. Only last thing I really wanted to briefly dive into was the future of defining dukes. I know there were a few. I was honored, Cog. There were so many people worrying about it.
Oh, I've seen it.
So many.
Oh, Colin, you didn't tell them?
Oh, yeah. We let them have a Mikey Bar moment. You have to drag me out of here.
Are you in here?
that was Paragon as fuck, Dustin.
Before we get into any of that, I just wanted to obviously open the door to any closing comments, I guess, about everything we discussed today: hardware, Xbox games on PlayStation, the potential clairvoyance of this move, the schism, was Colin right, the competition in the space, and so on. So we'll go around the horn. Sounded like you now, Colin. We'll go around the horn. We'll start with you, Cog. Any any closing thoughts, sir, on this subject?
Yeah.
Any additional thoughts that I did not prepare us for?
No, you're good. I think, listen, it's always consider these like inflection points in the industry, right? These points of change, potential change, and what could happen and how the future looks a couple of years from now. And if this goes through based on the sourcing, right? Yeah, this is a significant change. It's a significant change for this brand, where it's going to be. There's a part of me that does agree with Colin in the sense of, once you take the emotionality of it out and you look at data, you look at metrics, you look at survivability and things that they have to do, I can understand. My always issues has just been the goddamn messaging. Don't put this base that has been this loyal to you through and subject him to anything like this, because the others do not. And it's going to be an undertaking for that PR and marketing team, how to construct that message, how to prove that it is valuable to their existence or sustainability. That's one thing. But, for me personally, I mean, they don't affect me in the sense that, look, I got everything, right? So if I want to play something, if they want to treat this like, okay, you're the Game Pass guy and you're going to get the VIP thing first, and this is to sustain us, kind of thing. All right, fine. Like, it really doesn't change it. Like, it's still my preferred platform. I still like, all the things there. It's just going to be the messaging. I will say my only concern with the long term is how much, brand damage do you do where it affects, maybe short term not affect you in the console and the hardware space, but long term, or is this you setting up a long term exit plan quicker than you what had anticipated based on hardware sales declining? That's a good question. But for me personally, as a gamer, I ain't going nowhere. There won't be a video from me. I won't be throwing things in the garbage.
Tweet out your receipt of you selling your shit back, coward.
Yeah, like
$3 you get from GameStop.
Yeah, I've never been that dude. I've never been the dude that have to make an announcement about where I'm going and what I'm doing in reference to.
Yeah, these dudes are announcing like attending universities.
I'm never
putting on the hat and everything at the
table. And we just, we brace for impact. We brace for impact on what is it, Monday or whatever next week. One of the most eventful days in gaming will be next week, because we will be taking notes on how this thing is handled. But as far as the Dukes, I'm still here if Colin happens.
Oh yeah, should I speak to that, Maddie? I don't even know. Like,
I don't want to speak for you.
You got to make the statement.
You gotta make this. Yeah. No, okay. So we had a writing. We'll jump into it now.
Okay,
do the writing.
We had a writing here from Von Aran, and we had multiple. And I was like scouring some of the Last Stand Reddit, because I poke in there from time to time. I'm a bit of a lurker there. And Von Aran wrote, "Serious question, Dukes. What happens to defining Duke if Xbox is now a third-party publisher? I know Maddie is Colin's redheaded stepchild, neglected and forgotten, and COG represents the bad juju of Sega kids. But don't sack the boys. Love the show. Would hate to see it gone. The doom and gloom just got me wanting to be more proactive for the future of LSM fam." And yeah, there was like a lot of people who were like pretty concerned that we were going to be on the outs with this. So yeah, Colin, it's your company. Of course, you speak to it how you will. But obviously, I would just say I didn't think this would affect anything. But go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry to say, no.
Got bad news right on the show.
No, this doesn't affect anything at all, because I actually thought about this. I tried to think about this somewhat holistically when this was all happening. I saw some people's concerns, and I'm like, again, going back to my own feeling, like, I don't think that Xbox is going away. I don't think Xbox exclusives are going away. I don't think that games are coming day and date to PlayStation, generally speaking, or Switch. So I don't really think that anything's really going to change anyway. Maybe it will, but I was thinking even proactively, there are two things. It's like defining Duke. If Xbox was just like, we're done, then I would imagine defining Duke would either turn into a PC podcast or an Xbox and PC podcast, like more explicitly, or we would just make a new show with you guys. That would be about something else. So as far as I'm concerned, you're permanently with us until you don't want to be, or until it's no longer financially feasible for us to have you here. But I would not let you guys go. It reminds me a lot of like at ESPN when something happens and a season ends or something, and it's like you want to keep your talent, so you give them another show or whatever. That would be like the worst case scenario, but you would still be doing something for us. But I don't think defining Duke's going anywhere, because I don't think Xbox is going anywhere. So yeah, nothing changes for us. I hope that that's kind of where your guys' minds were as well, but I don't want to
Yeah.
Speak for you.
I mean, at least for me, yeah.
Glad I ain't laid off.
Yeah, I thought I was going to get back on food stamps for a second.
I was part of the 1900.
Oh man.
Yeah, man. Like when I saw it, I was like, this might make the show a little more interesting now because, I think the broader, like what I've noticed at our show is when something big happens, like Starfield release or like a Redfall catastrophe or the FTC, like it's really fun to talk about Xbox. And I don't think that's going to go away. But now if it appeals to more people, like we spoke about the fanboy shit earlier, like I'm very over that kind of behavior online. I just don't respond. I don't tolerate. I don't like it. If Xbox kind of just detaches themselves from that whole part of the ecosystem and they're more agnostic, then maybe a bit of a selfish, like, yes. But honestly, like I wouldn't hate that. I wouldn't hate us just kind of sitting there. Because what I noticed, I started thinking about it more when we did Summon Sign. I'm like, this show is so great because we just get to talk games.
Talk games.
Right. And I'm like, this is awesome. And so I'm like, yeah, if Defining Duke's future is more in line with like just where our Xbox published games going or whatever, almost like a Sega. Look, I ran a Bethesda podcast. Dustin was a part of it. And it became more like just gaming centric, but like that was a Bethesda show for years. If I could run a show about Bethesda, Xbox owns enough companies where, I'm not too worried about that. But obviously, Cog, if you have any additional thoughts, please.
No, it's fun. And like I said, to me, it's always been about the games. And that's what I love about LSM. We all play games. We have a passion for it. And we got more than enough to talk about. I look at every segment, some of this side, Sacred Symbols, that what games play segment is always intense because there's a passion there, and that to me what it ultimately comes down to, regardless of what banner is above that you play on, right? That's what it's about. So to me, business as usual ain't nothing really changing for me.
Sorry, everyone, you're stuck with us.
Yeah, you stuck with us. Keep clipping us too.
They will.
Clip that.
They will, no doubt. Dude,
you're getting fired.
That's the sad thing is that I just never want to get to the point where like I can't imagine doing content that focuses on other people's content, like what they say. Like we focus on Sony's content or the company's content, the video games, but I find the obsessiveness. It's like, what would happen to those people's content if they stopped? If they just said for a year, we're never going to mention anything anyone else says, and we're just going to analyze and talk from the gut, they'd be fucked because they're so uninteresting, and many of them are so stupid and so know so little about video games that they would not be able to do that. And so, like the kind of level of clipping it's harassment and it's annoying, but it's also kind of an honor because like no one's clipping them.
It is. So look, I'm popping, I'm hot, like, oh, word. Like, your whole game revolves about me. Like, oh, this is
continue on the horn, Colin. Any closing thoughts on everything we've discussed today with Xbox?
Yeah, so just to kind of put a fine point on it, like I personally, and we'll see what happens, like I just don't think it's going to be what the worst case scenario. I believe, again, in the hi-fi rush to see if these things, I do believe that Starfield is going to come to PS5 at some point. I don't know if they'll say all these things at that point. And maybe Indiana Jones later, because again, people were so abusive about this stuff of me just saying like, the Indiana Jones contract is probably made under a different, we saw this through the Insomniac leak, how the contracts were getting more and more stringent, licensing money was getting more and more. And I'm like, I wonder if that would ever move. And of course I got beat up for that, but I think that things like that will happen. But I think that legacy content will end up migrating too. So I do believe the Master Chief Collection and all that stuff will eventually come over. Again, I don't know what they're going to say next week, but I think those things happen. But I think people have widely overreacted to this, and that I think there's a lot more that we don't know. I think that the lack of them simply saying like we this isn't true, it means that there's truth to it, and so we have to go in with that. But I don't want to like I've tried, and I'm not going to do it now. Like about stunting on anyone about kind of seeing things differently. But I do want to say this one caution though, and I mean this from my heart, is like you should truly be careful what you ask for, because consolidation led down this road for Xbox, and they would have maybe ended up here one way or the other, but they've consolidated to such a degree that the financial moves they have to make become much more urgent, and it requires them to play nicely with others. And I think that a possible future of a Microsoft gaming brand would be as the biggest third party in the world. And maybe they can figure that out. And maybe that's the mid and long term. But I think that I understand why Xbox fans are upset, generally speaking, but I just think you have to kind of temper your expectations for what's actually going to happen and understand that this could very well go into keeping everyone's worried about losing your games and Game Pass and all those things. And it's like, this could really, whether they say it or not, save Game Pass and save the Xbox brand. It's not that Sony has become about entertainment. More than half of its money comes from movies, TV shows, music, and games. Video games are the biggest moneymaker at Sony, and they've become a creative company. Microsoft has Xbox as a small item that's become much bigger, I think even bigger than Windows now, in their internals because of Activision, and they're going to start paying much closer attention because people have to understand that Xbox was allowed to flounder because it didn't really matter. And I'm not trying to be a dickhead, but they were looking at it and like, this is small fries. We should be in this space. We'll mess around with it. It doesn't really matter. And when you start to invest more and more and more into it, it starts drawing the eye of Sauron more and more and more. And they're going to look. And so choices are going to have to be made. And what's clear to me is that Game Pass isn't where it needs to be at all. That the third-party sales situation has eroded significantly, and that they need to figure out a different way to make money. And so they will figure it out. And it's not just about PlayStation, it's about Switch, and it's going to be about the next Switch. And I wonder if some games go to one and not the other, and they and play both sides. I would do that too. I mean, it's not unprecedented. Ori's already on Switch, right? So that's kind of my take, is that I just think gutturally I understand, like, but like, wait, because I don't know that it's what you think it's going to be. But I think that this is some level of capitulation that I understand if you're a fanboy hits you right in the feels. Because the reality is that God of War is not coming to Xbox. And Mario being on Xbox is laughable, right? Like, that's never going to happen. And that's not something that the fan bases of those consoles have to worry about, in quotes. And so maybe that's where the imbalance comes from. But if you care about the brand as much as you say you do, then this might be what's necessary to stave off the inevitable stranglehold that the board at Microsoft is going to have over this brand to extract money out of it. And you better be careful. And further consolidation, I think, is going to, like, if people keep rooting for consolidation, understand there is a direct relationship between consolidating at Microsoft and this problem becoming way worse. You know, if you want to race forward to a reality where you have to basically release on everything, then keep buying things. You know,
they're saying they're gonna
do.
And
so and they have the cash. Thankfully for them, they have cash, right? And they have options and other things. They don't have to borrow money to do it because that would be prohibitive, and that's stopping a lot of M&A from happening. So they could probably get some pretty good deals. But the higher your headcount becomes, look at Embracer. Like, Embracer was riding their entire organization on a $2 billion loan from the Saudi royal family that didn't come through, and it all collapsed. And you have to understand that that's not happening in Xbox, or hasn't happened in the past, because of Microsoft. And at some point that patience is going to go away. So I think that I've said on Sacred Symbols at the end is what I would do as a PlayStation fan. You guys better buy those games.
That's what I was going to say.
Like, if the Jenga tower is kind of shaky, if you want to pop it over and get those games, buy them. You know, like, buy them. And I'm not going to buy Sea of Thieves because I'm not interested in it, but I'll buy Hi-Fi Rush. Sure.
Yeah, I'd love that game.
Yeah.
So those are my closing thoughts. And thank you for having me, by the way, Matty.
Oh, of course. This has been probably one of my favorite episodes we've ever done. Chris, let's go to you. Closing thoughts, comments, concerns, ideas.
Yeah, man. Colin really covered a lot of what I think I would have said, but I think ultimately let's put on our our pessimist hats and assume the worst will come to pass. You know, that would be really devastating, I think, for a number of reasons. I think the gaming industry is a better place with an Xbox hardware component as a part of it. I'm kind of with Colin, where I really don't think they're going anywhere. They've been making Surfaces for a while, and Surface has not in any way supplanted, you know, the stranglehold that MacBooks have had. And so to me, I think it's largely a non-starter, but you know, I'm rooting for that brand in some way. It's really, I mean, I think I talked about this with Maddie a long time ago. I think it might've been on Summon Sign or some other thing where, like, it's it's really it's not fun to see them on the back foot so much, you know. And it would be if this is like what they need to do to realize their full potential as like a games publisher, you know, and really unleash the potential of their games. I mean, like I said earlier, 20 million players on Halo Infinite on one set of machines is that's really fucking good. And if that can expand to the entirety of PlayStation, that's crazy. And that's great. You know, I think ultimately it'll end up with more people getting to play more games, and I think that's great. But I understand the feeling of loss that might come as a result of this, because it does it feels like in some semblance, even though we're talking a little bit preemptively, we haven't seen this business update event. It does feel like the industry is changing in a way that we haven't really, you know, I haven't seen ever in my life paying attention to this. Some older gamers might know the feeling well, but we've had a long time, 20 something years of Xbox, Nintendo, and PlayStation. And the idea that would change in a significant way, even if they're not going away, is fascinating at the very least. But hang in there is what I would say.
Yeah,
you guys got it. Dustin, how about you?
Yeah, well, even more so than Chris. I don't know if I have much to say that hasn't been said, so I'll just reiterate on a few other points. Number one, Apple, stay out, please.
Yeah.
Please, I love you. I'm in an abusive relationship with Apple, okay? I get my best work done, but boy, is she expensive. And I don't like the way she controls me. So Apple, stay out. But yeah, I would just, I don't know, let me be a little feely here for a second. This was an awesome episode. This is one of the most fun I've ever had podcasting ever. So thank you guys. This has been so fun, and just it's really fun when we get to really dive deep and talk about this stuff. And I guess it's just an encouragement, not to like be like us, but we talked about the Twitter aspect of things and how people treat each other. And it's like, man, you know, it's fun. And we make jokes. Maddie, I made that edit with Phil Spencer last night.
We do a little trolling. We do
a little troll.
You can
in
tell
the,
it's
in the Trump voice that I can't do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all in good fun. Be excellent to one another. So for tonight, you know, fuck all this. I'm going to play the premier PlayStation content. I'm going to blow my foam with Foam Stars. Check that out.
Oh yeah, it's out today.
That's another pause moment, man. Blow my foam.
Blow my foam. I'm going to squirt that foam all over.
I ain't letting it off. I see.
I'll end with this. You know, just to quote Phil Spencer: "When everyone plays, we all win."
Messy.
Oh man.
Well, you're ending on such a positive note. I feel bad because I'm a little less optimistic, but I'll close it nonetheless with that. I never had faith in Xbox's ability to communicate its ideas. I think what they've shown content-wise is why Developer Direct works well, because it just shows, while it's very sizzle, really, it just shows a lot of the game, and it leaves less room for the talking. But this is, again, I must just underline that they're coming from a point of defense with an event they were planning for the spring that's been expedited. There were rumors that it was end of February, but it's been expedited. And they have to, again, cover all of this ground and make it clear what will be exclusive, what won't be exclusive, what's happening with Game Pass, if anything's changing price structure wise, how are you releasing games? I mean, it's got to be a lot, and it has to be clear and concise and understandable, where it's like, they have to take the Xbox fans who are on edge and settle them where it's like, hey, we're like, just tell them what's happening. We are here to stay, or we are considering leaving. Like, it has to be that direct, I think. And I don't think they're going to do that. I don't have a ton of faith in how they're going to communicate this idea. I have to root myself in the fact that when these rumors are spiraling, Greenberg's usually the guy who I think is kind of like the intermediary. Like he gets involved in.
He's the diplomat.
Like, no. Yeah, like he's like no. Like when there was rumors of like Starfield or Elder Scrolls 6 going to PlayStation, he was the first guy to step out once it started getting out of control and go like, hey, no, right? And the buck kind of stops there. Then sometimes it surpasses him, and then Phil, for example, with the FTC leaks, it goes a little higher, right? This is a high profile leak. So he has to step out and go, hey, these plans have changed, right? And it was addressed quick enough. These rumors have spiraled for weeks and weeks and weeks. Now we're here. And the only thing we got on an official level was we have a business update event next week. See you there. No sort of, and I could understand the argument of like, maybe they're just sort of saying, say nothing. Let's just have one concise message to speak for the situation and let that be it. Saying too much or too little, let's just keep it blank, flat, and let the event speak for itself. It's possible that's the approach. But when there was no denial of like, hey, it's not what you think, or hey, like we're here to stay, like even saying we're here to stay and we'll talk about that next week. They didn't even say that. And to me, it does signify not maybe the worst, like they're out, but it doesn't give me confidence. And and while I think a lot of our conversations have brought out really good points that I think Xbox could tackle it from, I think one of the major ones that stuck with me the most is what Cog said about sustainability versus greed. And I think we will have a very clear sight of what won out, right? If this is one thing they said during the layoffs in the memo from Phil Spencer, sustainable growth, cost structure moving forward, right? This is why they apparently laid over 2,000 people off now, right? Sustainable growth. And this next step now is restructuring how they do their entire games business for sustainable growth. And so I don't think you make that massive directional shift, pivot, all that stuff, just to kind of walk back because of a week of blowback on Twitter and go like, hey, look, guys, we're here. The exclusive business is the same. Like, I don't know if I see that. And I'd love to be wrong, but I think they're committing to whatever they're planning on doing. Maybe it'll be less heavy-handed. Like maybe they're planning like, yo, it's all there. But maybe now they're saying like, okay, 6 months on Xbox and then we'll come over to PlayStation. Like maybe that's the change, but I don't think we're going to suddenly see a reverse course. It's like, yo, guess what? It's all the same. I don't think they're going to come out and say that. So, otherwise, it just negates the point of the event. So they're committing in this new direction. And it's really just about hardware and software and your service and what is going to happen with them. Will there be another generation? Like that has to be answered. You don't have to say when. Will you be making another console? Are you actually going to keep playing in this space in that way? Are you just going services? And that's, again, these are 1,000,001 questions I've laid out. And I don't know if they're going to answer all of those really at all.
And Maddie, an important note too is, I think with the consolidative efforts is that they've just put themselves in a position where they need Nintendo and PlayStation. Like they need them.
Yeah.
Like it can't work without them now. And their competitors are not in that position. So the one thing that I fear is that people, I fear that there's this really, really simplistic, almost ridiculous idea that there's going to be like a tit for tat. And I'm like, I wouldn't expect that. Like,
no,
that's
I
not
had
happening.
the idea when it was originally like the Hi-Fi Rush, Sea of Thieves. A lot of people took me out of context, naturally. But I was saying like, oh, it makes sense if like Nintendo said like, hey, here's Astral Chain, or like something that's not defined their platform necessarily in a meaningful way. Like, here's Ultimate Alliance 3. Like I could see that kind of partnership going both ways where it's like, just like Nintendo, like, do you think they want their software just sitting there? Like eventually maybe they want to just generate some sales on that. That could be cool. But yeah, I think those who thought or misconstrued what I said, thinking like, oh, Mario to Xbox is like, that's definitely not happening.
Yeah, I just wanted to underline that note because I didn't even hear what you said about that, but like that. Oh, I wanted to underline just like there is this component of need that people need to keep in the equation. It's no longer a question. Like with Game Pass can't support all these studios. Xbox's ecosystem can't support it. Like, so you have to kind of embrace the agnosticism. It's what you wanted.
Yeah.
Like it's, I hope more than ever Sony doesn't buy a fucking goddamn thing. Not a thing. You know?
Do you think I don't want to drag it up, but do you think they look at this and are they observing what's happened potentially with Xbox and thinking like, maybe we just don't keep buying?
Yeah, I think there are certain studios that they would buy. Like you can imagine them buying Arrowhead or something. But I think from a publisher level, they look at this and say like, this requires too much of a reliance. Like we don't have a reliance on anyone right now. The only reason MLB is even on fucking Xbox is because it has to be. They wouldn't be there in any way, shape, or form if it was up to Sony. So I think that they have to look at this and say, like, if we get over our skis on this and we have to start relying on other people like they do, we could have the same exact problem. I just think it's a matter of like of responsibly expanding. Microsoft doesn't add half, like what is it, 0.5x to their gaming revenue by a purchase and then say like everything stays the same. It was never going to be like that. And what I'm really curious about is if they say anything about Call of Duty, because I'm very curious if Call of Duty will ever go on Game Pass. Like I feel like there's a situation where they're going to start differentiating like what goes there. And that's the one thing I think could happen that pisses people off, is them saying like day and date isn't going to be a thing for everything anymore. It'll be a thing for most of our stuff, but there are certain things like Doom or something, like anything that will launch multi-platform is not going to be on Game Pass or whatever it's going to be. I don't know if they can, that might be a bad marketing move, but I think you can imagine that being the uncomfortable wrinkle much more than like what people think it's going to be, which is like, we're fucking disappearing like a puff of smoke.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's not happening, so.
Yeah, definitely the Game Pass in the Call of Duty situation, and also the structure of Game Pass. Does that change in any way? I know Chris mentioned about Ultimate and it kind of being the end all be all, and say, hey, if you want this, does that talk happen like to sustain day and date? You have to be in the. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. All aspects of it, and like I said, I know for a fact that they are still going to acquire. And from my understanding, yes, it will be all multi-plat. And the key for me is because clearly the strategy has changed recently. Because up into a couple of months ago, we didn't hear about this level of pivot. So I am very curious to see if they are transparent with why. That's going to be the key for me, and the sustainability aspect.
So sad.
I
was walking and I saw the great Marcus Phoenix. He was palling around with a sack boy, and I said, wow, that's gross. Get him out of here. Don't give him his chainsaw gun.
Next week will be an interesting episode of Defining Duke. I don't know how we'll end up releasing this. We'll talk about that afterwards, but we'll it'll be a normal episode of Duke with like just Cog and I, and release it as usual. But this is definitely a really awesome episode at a major turning point in gaming history. So we'll see how it all pans out come next Monday. But certainly you've got our analysis, our projections, our predictions, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your thoughts down below. As always, you can support us over at patreon.com/laststandmedia, where you can, just for, what is it, a buck? Do you get early access to everything?
Mm-hmm. The buck is early access to Sacred Symbols Plus now, and $5 early access to all the core shows.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. So get early access to all our shows. We go live every Thursday. Sacred Boys are doing a phenomenal job as always. You can check them out. And thank you so much everyone for tuning in. I don't think this is a good week for a hashtag, so just let us know your thoughts. Like, what do we do? DD dead? Like, what the hell
hashtag,
are we doing?
Oh no!
Hashtag it's over, man.
Oh no, DD. At least that'll be a mess.
I'll give the audience permission to make up their own hashtag. You use it in the comments. Let us know that you got this deep in the episode. We appreciate you immensely. We'll catch you next week for whatever's happening with Xbox. And take great care of yourselves. Catch you on episode 163 of Defining Duke. Peace out.
Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from the United States of America. The show was conceived by Matthew Mr. Matty Plays Schroeder and me, Colin Moriarty, and is written and produced by Matthew Schroeder. Matty's co-host is Barry Lord Cognito Eversley. Defining Duke's executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including Defining Duke, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level on Patreon, and we're thankful for your kindness and generosity.